All right, good morning, everyone. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to our 2018 winter meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. I appreciate everyone's attendance here and look forward to a really good and positive meeting. First order of business that we have before us today is to adopt the agenda as presented, and at this point in time, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion from Mayor Wharton. Is there a second? Second, Secretary Hargett. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry, yeah, I've neglected to call the roll. Ms. Osborne, please call the roll.
Evan Cope.
Here.
Dr. Dishner.
Here.
Mintha Roach.
Here.
Vernon Stafford.
Here.
Mr. Wharton.
Here.
Pam Coben.
Here.
Frank Watson.
Here.
Takasha Winton. Jimmy Johnston.
Here.
Dr. Morrison. Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard. Comptroller Wilson.
I'm right here.
Jeremy Chisenhall.
Here.
Kara Soyak.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have 12 present. We have a quorum.
Very good. Thanks very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is adoption of the minutes from our November 15th, 2017 meeting, and I will entertain a motion to adopt those minutes.
I have a correction first.
Certainly, yes, sir.
Just a notation, I believe on the third page of the minutes, there's a discussion about Title IX. The minutes reflect or attribute the question that was asked to me, and I believe it was actually Mayor Wharton that asked that question.
Very good. I will treat that as a motion to amend the minutes, and we'll entertain a second to that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Coben. Let's vote on that first. All in favor of amending the minutes as presented, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Now the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended. I have a motion from Comptroller Wilson. Is there a second? Second. I'm sorry. Okay, great. I have a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Very good. Motion carries. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, an administrative note for the members is we're in our new venue. You will need to press the button on the left to be heard. The microphones are not voice activated.
Yeah, and on that note, I appreciate you saying that, Mike. On that note, I want to thank Mike and our staff for securing this room to hold this meeting in. I think we all can agree that this this is a better facility than our boardroom was previously, and so I know hopefully it'll facilitate a better meeting, and everyone will be able to appreciate that we're in a much better environment over here, I think. All right, now it's time for my report, and I do have a few comments, but first I'd like to introduce our newest commission member, Ms. Kara Soyak, who is a doctoral student at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. She is getting her doctorate degree in mathematics, and I think in her spare time she likes to conduct math research projects. Is that right?
I do, yeah.
Okay, very good.
You'll fit in well.
So anyway, we welcome you, Kara, to the commission. Thanks very much for being here. I'm sure many of the people in this room had the opportunity to watch Director Krause last week give his presentation on the state of higher education in Tennessee when he testified before the Senate Education Committee. It's probably an understatement to say that in this state we are in unprecedented territory here, and I mean that in a very good way. We have now more Tennesseans than ever in the history of our state who are going to college. We are on track to reach our Drive to 55 goal, attainment goal. Dr. House is going to present on that later today, and I think you'll be very impressed with what the statistics show. We are reaching more students, more Tennesseans with financial aid while we are simultaneously reducing the debt obligation that those students have to incur in order to obtain a credential in post-secondary education. All of these achievements, all the success that we're having right now is due in large part to the great work of the staff of this commission, the Tennessee Board of Regents, the locally governed institutions, and the UT system. And we're grateful for the hard work of everybody involved. This obviously raises the question where we take a time to kind of reflect on what the task ahead requires of us. And it requires, in my view, that we maintain the momentum that we have. We have tremendous momentum right now. We're leading the nation in so many different categories, but we can't let our foot, to use the Drive to 55 analogy, we cannot let our foot off the gas pedal. We need to keep pressing. There's a lot more work to do. There's a lot more work that can be done, and that's our goal. Keep in mind also, for those of you who've been around higher education for a long time, you can understand that for our commission, it's sort of a unique challenge now because we're operating under the Tennessee Focus Act, which, as all of you know, is the largest change, the biggest change in governance structure in our state since 1972, which, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the year that the Board of Regents was created. Is that right? So anyway, so that's sort of all that's going on in the background. Our role as a commission continues to evolve, but our fundamental mission is not unchanged and continues to be our core focus, and that's promoting the welfare of Tennessee students. That involves 5 core principles as I see them: making higher education affordable, making sure we have high-quality academic programs for our students to participate in, regulating the for-profit institutions, making sure that our veterans have the benefits and access to higher education that they rightly deserve, and removing any and all barriers that may exist that's within our power to remove for Tennesseans to go back to school. And we're doing that through Tennessee Promise, and we're doing that through Tennessee Reconnect, and you're going to hear more about Tennessee Reconnect, as I mentioned, later in the meeting. We're going to do something new, or we're going to discuss something new here at this meeting. Director Krause and I have been discussing over the last several months that the executive director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, to our knowledge, and to the extent we could research it, has never been evaluated, at least in a public forum before, with respect to the job and the performance that the executive director is maintaining. So one of the items we're going to discuss today is establishing some metrics for our executive director to be measured by with respect to the job that he is doing, which I think we all agree he's doing an excellent job. But we're going to hear more about that today, and I know that the commission members, you have on your desks a copy of the metrics that we propose that be adopted for Director Krause's evaluation when we do take that action. And finally, with respect to going forward on our meeting today, we're going to be discussing in some important facets of what we do as a commission. We're going to review a new and historic academic program at Austin Peay State University. We're going to discuss the way that we approve master plans across the state, and we're going to hear about the good work that's being done at Tennessee Reconnect. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Director Krause.
And I will take the podium. I do appreciate all the members of the commission that are here today. Commissioner Winton has asked for me to pass on her regards, and we had an unfortunate scheduling conflict, but we will certainly endeavor as we think about our May meeting early to make sure 2 things. 1, we believe this facility is important to our hearings moving forward, so the availability of the Senate and House rooms will be kind of a scheduling cornerstone for us, and then, of course, most importantly, the availability of all the commissioners. A really quick word on the goals you have before you that Chairman Cope mentioned. I do seek a rigorous and public evaluation from the commission because I will rigorously evaluate our leadership team at THEC, and I ask them to do the same of their team. And so I hope you all will review the goals that I've proposed for this year and then provide feedback directly to myself and Chairman Cope, and then look forward to throughout the year and then ultimately at the end of the year hearing directly from the commission. I want to discuss 3 things this morning, all of which point towards Chairman Cope's remarks about removing barriers in Tennessee higher education. Also, all 3 of them are novel initiatives that, to our knowledge, no other state is doing, and that makes it especially exciting. I want to start off by talking about our role of historically black colleges and universities in Tennessee. We're fortunate. We have 7 HBCUs in Tennessee. That's more than other states. We also have some of the nation's most historic HBCUs located here in Tennessee. The collective growth of that sector is important for us to reach our Drive to 55 goals. And last session, we were fortunate that the General Assembly provided, to our knowledge, the first ever full-time position in a state higher education agency in America focused solely on HBCU excellence and success. So I would ask Brittany Mosby to please stand. Brittany joins us from Pellissippi State Community College, where she was a tenured professor of mathematics. She has a master's degree in mathematics from Carnegie Mellon, you know, like all of us. She has a bachelor's degree from Spelman College, and she is a third-generation HBCU grad. What we're most excited about is the message this sends that Tennessee is serious about HBCUs. We're serious about being a resource. We're serious about being a partner. And Brittany has hit the ground running, and we're grateful to have you on our team. Got a little echo there. Thank you, OW. Our second thing I'd like to discuss really quickly is the Advise Tennessee initiative. You all will remember the roots of this initiative. It really lay in all the great work this agency's done around Gear Up over the last several years. Just a quick refresher that Troy Grant will likely touch as well. Gear Up was one of the first opportunities for THEC to get out of Davidson County and to get in schools and directly serve students. Advise Tennessee took a federal program, Gear Up, and has now put in an enduring state presence. They've been doing incredible work this year, which you're about to hear about, and I want Troy to come to the podium, but also Dr. Sharika Nelms. Are you in the audience? Dr. Sharika Nelms, who leads the work directly, would like to recognize you. And Troy, please come up.
Thank you so much, and good morning. So, just a little bit of an update on Advise Tennessee, and just a hit on what Director Krause just mentioned. Let's see. There we go. Advise Tennessee was predicated on this idea around what we've seen work in Gear Up and really what some of the state and national best practices were. The Nicemonger Foundation, the work that's being done with the Ayers Foundation in West Tennessee. And so on that foundation, we received a state allocation to hire 30 advisors that we would place and embed. They would be employees of the state. We would embed them in high schools that were selected through a competitive bid process. To be eligible, those schools had to have a college going rate less than the state average. And we had a rigorous selection process. You can have the best advisor in the world, but if they're not in a school that's excited about doing this work, where they will give access to their students, then the good work won't happen. And so we had them apply, we had an interview process, and then simultaneously we selected advisors across the state. We had nearly 500 applicants for these positions statewide, which was fantastic and beyond our expectations. And we feel the group that we pulled together is a who's who really in this work. So we have everyone from former directors of college, financial aid at a community college, to school counselors, experienced teachers. Collectively, these individuals have all the experience we need really to move the needle in these schools. So our goal is to dramatically increase the number of Tennessee students who are accessing and succeeding in higher education. The services that we offer, the things that you would expect working with juniors and seniors: one-on-one college advising, college visits, financial aid assistance, helping students navigate this process. When we talk to first-generation students from low-income families, they intrinsically know that higher education is a good thing. It's something they should consider. They just don't know what are the steps to get from point A to point B. Our advisors partner with schools to help guide that pathway and make that path clear. Here are where the schools are. You'll see we have a good geographic distribution across the state. We are in many of the distressed counties that will be talked about later. And so, again, this is the fruit of that competitive selection process. In terms of some of the data, one of the challenges with college-going data is that it always lags. So the first group that we worked with was last year. We served over 15,000 students last year, and then nearly 15,000 students so far this year. We've had significant increase in some leading indicators that I just want to highlight for you. In FAFSA filing, amongst our Tennessee Promise applicants, we've had a 9 percentage point increase in FAFSA filing at the participating schools. And I will note that we started providing services in late October, so well within the school year. So we didn't have a full year to work. Among all the students in that population, we had 7% increase. That equals out to about 800 additional FAFSAs. If all of those students were to receive maximum Pell, it would double the state's investment in this program. A couple of other things, if you look at this, I pulled out two stories. Henry County, we had nearly a 20 percentage point increase in FAFSA filing. Lake County, one of our more distressed counties, a very small county, significant increase again in their FAFSA filing. When looking at Tennessee Promise application this school year, 96% of our seniors filled out the Tennessee Promise compared to an astounding and excellent 85% among all seniors across the state. This is a 15 percentage point increase from where we started at these schools before we started implementation. We should have some additional data data in the coming months around. So these are all leading indicators. The real prize here is how many of our students actually matriculate into higher education. And I will say, and this is attributed to Sharika and her team, is that we replicated some excellent research, Ben Castleman and Lindsay Page research around summer melt. One of the advantages of having these advisors be 12-month employees as opposed to the 10-month employees or 11-month employees within a high school context is that we stayed with our students throughout the summer. So we advised them over the summer, we texted them, we nudged them, we made sure that they were continuing to press towards that matriculation, and I'm confident and excited about what we'll find in the coming months. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about Advise Tennessee. Great, thanks so much.
Allied to Troy's presentation, I want to talk briefly about how we're thinking about our work over the next year. One of the things Chairman Cope mentioned is we really don't have a shortage of opportunities in this state. We've taken one of the single biggest issues, cost, completely off the table for high school graduates and adults. But one of the things we learned really through Troy's initiatives, but also through your voice and your districts and through our General Assembly, and then some of my own travels is there's still a barrier to those opportunities. Just having programs exist doesn't mean they're necessarily connecting with Tennesseans. And we found that was particularly true in these distressed counties that you'll see highlighted in red. There are 19 counties in Tennessee that meet the economic development definition for distressed. I would just tell you, if you visit one of these counties, it becomes evident fairly quickly why they were listed as distressed. Even in a time where our state is having unprecedented employment levels, many of these 19 counties lag those levels. And so our epiphany internally was having a boots on the ground presence in those counties is going to be very important. And that the mere presence of the programs doesn't matter if the county mayor and the county commission and the school board in Clay County, Tennessee, if they don't know that, then those programs really aren't reaching their students. So what I'm proposing to the commission is that over the next 12 months, for the first time ever, we will have a concerted effort for distressed county assistance. What does that look like? A couple different things. As I mentioned, we really have a programmatic spread that's pretty impressive. But we need to make sure that we're talking about these higher education programs to non-higher education crowds. So first, we'll convene the counties. And we'll convene, I'm really happy if community college presidents and TCAP presidents attend. We hope they will. It's not the target audience. And oftentimes when we go to these counties, we find ourselves meeting with the choir to talk about higher ed versus meeting with people, employers and economic development officials that probably most need to help us reach Reconnect in particular. And Jessica Gibson at the end of our presentation today will share with you in depth the Reconnect implementation plan. But it hinges on employers because adults, the only time you'll have them as a captive audience are the 40 hours a week that they're with their employers. So we will keep the commission updated. We plan to visit all 19 of these counties. As a matter of course, I'd like to point out many of our staff are in these counties all the time. We're going to make sure, though, that we have a very targeted focus on their county leaders. And we're going to make sure that those county leaders, when they're thinking about something like opioids, for instance, they also understand that there's higher education solutions that we can bring to the table. So we'll be working on that over the next year. I'll certainly be seeking your guidance, especially our rural distressed county members, to be able to get your perspective on how we can be most effective. I would close with a point of personal privilege. I want to thank, as always, our presidents in attendance, Dr. Brian Nolan from East Tennessee State University, Dr. Phil Oldham from Tennessee Tech, Dr. Elisa White from Austin P, and then, of course, Dr. David Rudd representing as the head of the LGI President Council. Both Dr. DiPietro and Chancellor Tidings had last-minute scheduling conflicts, but have sent their most able designees to be here. I'd also like to recognize, as we do our work here at THEC, something that the Commission doesn't always see is that during legislative session, first, our number one priority at THEC during session, at least within the executive team, is often legislative session, ensuring that higher education budget matters are being attended to and assuring that members of the General Assembly are receiving world-class service from our team. What you often don't understand, if you don't see it firsthand, is that staff play an incredibly critical role in that, and that it is as important to our team who the Senate Education Chair is as it is who her Education Committee analyst is. And Michael Marin, against his will, I'd like to recognize in the back left corner, our relationship with these full-time professional staffers on committees is an hourly, if not daily, conversation. And a lot of the higher education goals that we're pursuing, the professional staff here make sure that we're able to pursue. Also, is Bruce Davis with us today? Bruce Davis from the Legislative Budget Office is the other conduit in which we maintain this running 4 or 5 month long dialogue while session's in, and we're grateful. We appreciate your support. that concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda, we'll now entertain the system reports. We'll start with the Tennessee Board of Regents. Dr. Russ Deaton, I think, is going to be presenting that report. Yeah, I'm sure.
Good morning, Chairman Cope, Director Kraus, members of the Commission, and those in the audience. I bring greetings from the Board of Regents, and particularly Chancellor Flora Tidings. I also bring regrets from her. This morning she learned she had a last-minute death in her extended family and is on her way to be with loved ones. So she sends her apologies. I want to talk to you about a few things that are going on at the Board of Regents, or as you may begin to hear us sometimes refer to ourselves as the college system of Tennessee. There are several things that are crucial to the work that is both important to the Commission, the LGIs, UT, and TBR. And one of them is to address the student remediation challenge that the state has. This commission is, of course, very familiar with the long-standing, quite durable problem that has been student preparation. And for many years, students came to higher ed in numbers larger than we would like to our system, not ready for college work. Later on, I know Dr. House will present some data on this as well, and I don't want to step on her toes, but I want to talk to you about a two-pronged strategy that the Board of Regents has taken in partnership with THEC and others to address this problem. And first, let me kind of describe what the problem is, and I want to thank, if he's watching, Dr. Robert Den on the board staff for making this graphic. This is effectively showing you how leaky the pipeline has been when students come to the community colleges needing remediation in math. The old system, which this represents, effectively identified a student who needs remediation with a 19 or lower on their ACT, and then put that student in a remedial math class, sometimes two. Once she got through that sequence, hopefully she then went to college level math. But at the end of the day, if you notice that lower right-hand corner, only about 1 in 20 students made it through that sequence and actually graduated from higher ed. That's a problem. So to begin addressing that, what the system has done over the last couple years is move away from, again, a prerequisite remediation strategy and towards what we call a co-requisite remediation strategy, which you've heard about it before from us a little bit. But essentially, it takes away the sequential aspect of going through remedial math and then college math, and instead places all students in a college-level math class, and then importantly, provides the learning support on the side as needed to get that student up to speed so she's ready to pass that math class and go on to college-level math. That has been adopted now system-wide. All of our remediation strategies are done in this co-requisite model. If you then look at how the success rates of this approach compare to the old approach, that's what's on the slide before you. And this is in the math sequencing. The blue bars, of course, are, and this is all broken down by ACT score. And so it gives you a sense of how students with different preparation levels react to this approach and this treatment. But in the old system, you can see there that the success rates were quite low for students getting through that math class. The orange bars are the success rates in the co-requisite model. And you can see on the far right-hand side, we've quadrupled the success rates for students getting through that sequence. We feel very good about these results. Hopefully, this translates into higher graduation rate numbers down the road, but the early successes for this approach are quite promising, and we're hopeful that this continues on into the future. Let me pause in case there are questions about this. Please interrupt me if you have them. I won't belabor this slide. Same data, but for the writing remediation sequence. Again, bottom line is success rates quite dramatically increased, and as importantly, across the ACT spectrum, this treatment effect is beneficial for students no matter if they are severely underprepared or just barely missed that cutoff. We see that across the ACT distribution. Director Krause.
So, Dr. Deaton, you've nearly doubled success, correct?
Yes.
I mean, that's the net takeaway,
Yes.
is we have exponentially increased our success.
Yes. Honestly, surpassing expectations. I mean,
Right.
we weren't quite sure what this would look like, but yeah, I mean, the math alone, from 12 to 57%, I think, writing is nearly doubled. This should hopefully have a big impact later on down the road with degree production. Dr. Rudd.
And Mike, let me reiterate for Russ, our engineering students have been a part of this, been remarkably successful. I think the improvement rates for us were in the 10 to 20% range. For our engineering students, it's been a great success. We're very appreciative.
That's good. The second of the two-pronged strategy, and this is one quite familiar to the commission staff here, is the SAILS program. And the acronym, and I hope I get this right, I always somehow mess up one of these 5 words: seamless alignment and integration of learning support. And those last 2 words are the key: learning support. This essentially tries to attack the remediation problem before students even get to higher ed. We know, again, from the ACT subscore who will need remediation. So rather than waiting until that student gets to higher ed through the co-rec model, SAILS tries to attack that while they're still in high school, where the higher ed and K-12 faculty work together on what the competencies will be in college-level math and begin to work on that problem while they're in high school. This has been under the leadership of the Commission for many years, as you know, and it is now reaching over 13,000 students with a 97% success rate, which is remarkable. That is a testament to the K-12 and higher ed faculty and staff throughout these high schools and these districts, and the leadership here at the Commission and at TBR to make this happen. So again, two-pronged strategy. Address that before they get to higher ed, and once they're in higher ed, co-requisite remediation. And again, Dr. Den did this great revision of the pipeline. Hopefully the water gushes out the end, I think, is the message I was supposed to deliver with success in graduates. Moving on to the second thing that Dr. Tidings asked me to talk about is Tennessee Promise, which you'll hear more about today. Remarkable numbers. I know that y'all have had great reports from your staff about it. I want to dig into a few things that we've also uncovered with assistance from your staff about Tennessee Promise. And let me start with just a bottom line: success rates. What you're looking at here is this first class of Tennessee Promise students and how well they have progressed through their first 4 semesters of higher ed, which is basically through spring of 17. As we all know, we're waiting for the 5th semester, which is just completed, to assess how their overall completion rates have done, but this is our analysis through their first 4 semesters. Moving left to right to orient you here, what that far left bar is the entirety of the community college first-time freshmen from the year before Promise, effectively a baseline. And after 4 semesters, what you see there is we had about what I would call a 55% success rate, meaning the 3 color bars. The gray bar are those students for whom we have no records. They left our system short of a degree, did not successfully transfer. Effectively, we had 55% of those students still enrolled somewhere or with a credential after 4 semesters. And you can see the breakdown: the graduation rate, the still enrolled rate, and the transfer rate. Compare that, the second bar is the 2015 cohort, which includes both Promise students and non-Promise students. One of the things that is interesting is of our student body, our freshman class, we have about a quarter of that are not on Promise, though they could have been. And I'll get to that later about why they may not be in Promise. But they're in our schools, they're going through programs, but they're not on Tennessee Promise. And you see their success rates through the same 4 semesters for that 2015 cohort. Again, about 55% still in school, but a higher graduation rate, that red bar. Then the last 2 bars are honing in on the Promise students. And that third bar is the Promise cohort specifically. This is about 13,000 of our 18,000 freshmen. And the graduation rate you see there of 14.5%. It happens to be right where those monitors come together. Oh, over here it's good. 14.5%, which is dramatically increased from the baseline numbers. And you see overall close to a 60% success rate. We're quite encouraged by this. Hopefully with 5th semester data, which we'll work on with your staff here, we'll find a graduation rate that's quite higher and is moving towards our goals. If you look at the non-Promise students, though, that 5,000 of the community college freshmen not on Promise, you see a lower success rate, and that is a trouble sign for us that we're working on. And there's more to that, but in the interest of time, I'll move on from that one. Secondly, an interesting finding is if you break the Promise program down, it's almost 3 programs in one. And let me describe this chart for you. Essentially, there are 3 types of students we see. The first type we call in Group A are those students who basically have all their financial aid covered by lottery scholarships and Pell Grants. They effectively have no financial outlay from Promise, though they're in the program. and that's about almost 6,000 of our students. They have an average ACT score of about 18.7, fairly well prepared. And we see an 11.4% grad rate for that group of students, our largest subgroup. That second group is essentially the promise students who are lottery eligible. They are much better prepared, 21 ACT. Average award is way lower because they're getting the lottery scholarship. And they are having about a 22% success rate, which is intuitive, given their preparation levels. And then finally, that third group are the students who are getting maximum financial support from Promise. There is no Pell Grants. None of them are low income, essentially. A trivial number on the lottery scholarship. Their ACT scores, as you see, are about 17. Their success rates are in the mid-single digits, 5.9%. So essentially, the program breaks down into 3 almost sub-programs. Interestingly enough, though, that bottom group, because they're on the full Promise Award, get about half of the money. So there is some analysis further to do about sort of the ROI of some of these numbers here. But again, all that combined shows you the first slide, success rates. This is breaking it down and looking at different subcategories of students. Finally, there are again about 5,000 of our students, freshmen, who were Promise eligible but were not on the Promise program. Question is why? This breaks down we have records on almost all of these students, save a few, and it tells you where in the process we missed them. Whether they missed a FAFSA deadline, all these students applied for Promise. Whether they missed a FAFSA deadline, 10% of the population fell out there. Another 16% never attended the meetings. They fell out there. You can see the others, but in gray is the more important one, we think, which is almost 40% missed Promise because they did not complete FAFSA verification, which the veterans of that effort know. That was a big problem back in 2015. We learned a lot of lessons for things we will do better, for how to get students more ready for FAFSA and verified when the federal government asks them to provide more information. Some changes to the federal financial aid system will help this, the use of prior data, for instance, but that was a big barrier for students. We learned a lot there. In cooperation with THEC, we hope to address that going forward.
Russ,
yes, sir,
can we
Chairman
go
Cook.
back to that
Yes, sir.
previous slide? In terms of other reasons for ineligibility, some other examples of?
In some cases they were an out-of-state student, obviously ineligible. Dr. Moreland, is there anything I'm missing? You may have something off the top of your head. Dr. Amy Moreland on our staff headed this analysis. Hate to put you on the spot. Anything else that we missed?
Some small reasons. Many of those are students who we are having trouble determining specifically what that reason is.
Yeah.
So that's a category that we're
Still unsure of, yeah. And we're working closely with THEC and THEC on that. This is for the Reese High School grads, yes, so they're demographically eligible, yeah, but we're not sure why. Short answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to call to the commission's attention, that fourth gray block, that's a real problem. Mm-hmm. And it's a problem duly owned by the state and the federal government. I'm very unhappy with the current state of FAFSA verification selection. It unduly focuses on low-income students almost every time. And for some reason, inexplicably this year, the verification rate rose. And that is often the federal government deciding we'd like to verify your FAFSA. So that's one half. The other half, which Dr. Deaton referenced, we won't belabor, but there are things colleges can do better.
That's right.
But I also want to commend the colleges. The first fall of Promise, when we realized there was a bit of a verification tsunami coming, most of the colleges, actually, I'm looking at Tim, we asked all the colleges to hold students, which meant the colleges accrued a liability on their ledger pending a student getting their verification done. So if we're assigning a pie chart here of responsibility, I'm going to assign a lot of it to the federal government and the way that they conduct verification, and am generally commending the colleges for the way that they have shepherded students through. I think we can still get better. I also think TBR is on the leading edge of getting better. But of all the good news that was shared, that's very troubling, that we lost 38% of our students because of what is by definition a bureaucratic decision by FSA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amen. Yeah, which hopefully gets better over the years with prior and more efforts on our part to address that problem. The last thing that I'd like to talk about, Dr. Tidings, along with Dr. Carol Perrier at the TBR office, has been working with officials from ECD on Tennessee Trained program. Essentially, this is a partnership between Department of Labor, ECD, and Higher Ed to effectively better retain and attract business and industry to Tennessee, knowing full well they can have their questions answered about higher ed and the pipeline of graduates before they get here. This is about 70 folks from ECD and higher ed in the first class going through TBR 101, higher ed 101, ECD 101, and just getting a more strategic thinking about how you recruit and retain industry. And oftentimes, as this commission knows, its top issue in many cases is the educational pipeline, and will that be there for them if they choose to locate their business here. That's an exciting program, year one of that, but we appreciate the partnership with ECD and labor in making that happen. I believe that is it for us. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thanks. Questions for Dr. Deaton?
One quick question. Dr. Deaton, what other states might be using the Tennessee Trains scenario with a guaranteed credential for industry?
What other states might be taking that approach? To our knowledge, nothing that is similar to this. I think it's novel. That there are oftentimes partnerships, I think, between higher ed and ECD, but this is much more deliberate than we've ever done before, in trying to kind of cut through some of the oftentimes the ambiguities between what higher ed knows about ECD and vice versa. So, Commissioner Coleman, I don't know if any other state has done it to the extent that Tennessee's trying this. Yeah.
Other questions? Thanks, Dr. Deaton.
Thank you.
Next, we'll entertain the report from the University of Tennessee System. Dr. Johnson? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Director Krause, members of the Commission. I am Tanja Johnson, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the University of Tennessee System. I thought I was being really smart as I was designated the chosen one for UT in Dr. DiPietro's absence, wrangling my colleagues from the back of the room so that I could read lips and make sure that I didn't get myself in any trouble, but I appreciate the opportunity to be before you here this morning. Dr. DiPietro regrets that he is unable to join us. He is hosting the UT President's Council showcase on the Knoxville campus and has more than 50 members of his President's Council advisory group on site for a series of meetings and tours and high-level presentations. Given his absence today, and I'm sure some of the media reports that some of you may have seen suggesting his early retirement, he did ask that I share with you that he has no immediate plans for retirement, and he remains fully committed to the work of the University of Tennessee and all that we have to do day to day to advance the state. So please know that he sends his best wishes and he is on the job. Since the last THEC meeting, like so many of you, we took some time to reflect on the successes and challenges of 2017. And while we had so much to be proud of, many of you know we ended the year on a bit of a sad note with the passing of Dr. David Milhorn just a few days before the long holiday break. Some of you may recall that Dr. Milhorn had just transitioned from his role as Senior Vice President of Research, Outreach, and Economic Development and President of our UT Research Foundation to that of Senior Vice President Emeritus and National Laboratory Relations Advisor. As we continue to miss our colleague, newly appointed Vice President Stacey Patterson, and I think the President mentioned to you her appointment at the last meeting, she's been keeping all facets of our research enterprise moving forward and going strong. As a matter of fact, as we look back on 2017, along with a record low tuition increase and positive enrollment growth across our system, UT Research was among the bright spots, achieving a record $481 million across the system in research and sponsored program expenditures. UT scientists produced, research produced the filing of 98 patents and an all-time high 166 new invention disclosures. And so that was extremely exciting for us. According to Dr. Patterson, this was a 20% increase over last year and a 100% increase over since 2011. As we settle into 2018, like all of you, we will be closely watching the governor's State of the State address as well as the legislative agenda to see what impact that may have on our priorities over the year. As you can imagine, again, from other media reports, we are closely watching general discussion on any possible reorganization of the UT Board of Trustees and will maintain focus on other key legislative areas of interest as they come up. We do have a couple of searches that are on the radar right now that we'll be launching either this spring or exploring a bit further. The president mentioned at the last meeting that we will be searching for a new vice president for human resources at our system. Just recently and since the last meeting, we announced the retirement of Ricky McCurry, who joined the UT system in 2015 as the Vice President for Development and Alumni Affairs, along with being the CEO and President of our UT Foundation. With his departure, Kerry Witcher, who is a longtime employee with the UT Foundation and Alumni Association, he will be serving as the interim VP and UT Foundation President until we get that search underway. Let me just wrap up with a few other quick system and campus-based announcements. On Wednesday, February 28th, Dr. DiPietro will present the system's formal State of the University address in the auditorium of the Nashville Library. That event will begin with a reception at 2:30, and his presentation will begin at 3. It will be streamed on the web and can be accessed via a link on the UT system homepage. And certainly if you have an interest in our progress and some of our priorities across the system, this will be a great opportunity to learn more about what we're doing and where we are going. In speaking of priorities, as we are all aware, the governor has laid out a very aggressive initiative to combat the opioid problems in the state. And UT is certainly steadfast in its commitment to doing its part to help address that epidemic. The university is taking a national leadership role in combating opioid deaths with our UT Health Sciences Center, first in the nation, Center of Excellence in Addiction Medicine, and the UT Institute for Public Service has partnered with the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee Health Foundation to provide drug training, drug overdose death training for those who need special training in the area for first responders. And so we're excited about those two things. At the State of the University address, Dr. DiPietro will outline with more details all of what we are doing across our system to help combat this epidemic, especially across our mission, because what we found is that whether it's research, education, or outreach, each of our campuses and institutes have something going on that will be usable for fighting the epidemic. At UT Knoxville, plans were announced this week for a new 228,000 square foot engineering services facility on the east side of the campus near Neyland Stadium. Everyone is excited about this facility. It will replace Berry Hall, Estabrook, and Pasqua Halls and serve as the home of the 6th ranked nuclear engineering department. And so that has a lot of buzz going about the Knoxville campus. At both UTC and UTM, we are engaged in provost searches, and that is always very critical for us. UTC Provost Gerald Ainsworth recently retired, and Business Dean Robert Dooley has been tapped to serve in the interim capacity. And they will be getting a national search underway here very shortly. At UT Martin, under the very charismatic leadership of Chancellor Keith Carver, the campus is engaged in what they hope will be the final days of their provost search as they prepare to host the last of 4 finalists for that position just next week. Finally, our experts in the UT Institute of Agriculture, they continue to explore new opportunities for Tennessee farmers. I'm sure no one here in the room is interested in the microbrewery industry, but one such example is a team of specialists that we have there who have been awarded a grant to explore of the competitiveness of specialty crops, including hops. And so specialists from multiple departments there will be looking at how other states are utilizing and improving hops production, and then providing and developing educational materials for those in Tennessee to help us better evaluate its production here. They will also be analyzing the demand for hops and other specialty crops by craft brewers to aid Tennessee's growing microbrewery industry. So that concludes my brief update on behalf of the University of Tennessee, and I appreciate the opportunity to share these few details, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Questions for Dr. Johnson? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Rudd.
It's a pleasure to share an update on the LGI institutions with you this morning. As evidence of the LGI's collaboration working together since the Focus Act, I wanted you to be aware that we are having the first LGI Day on the Hill. That will be February 14th, and we're going to have a couple of critical meetings as a part of that. We'll be meeting with the governor along with a group of legislators to talk about the implementation of the Focus Act, the successes as a result of the Focus Act, and some of the challenges from the Focus Act. So if you are available on the 14th, you might want to peek in and get involved in that. We're excited about it. Aside from moving into the new session, I only have some individual updates from the universities. Let me provide you a little bit of an overview about what is going on around the state with the LGI institutions. Austin Peay State University is pleased to share that their enrollment is looking up this spring, about a little bit over 1%, very good sign. Research funding at Austin Peay is up nearly 12% in active grant funding year over year. They recently received a $1.3 million grant to open a Veterans Upward Bound office on campus and continue to do some remarkable work in the veterans area. Also recently they received a $175,000 grant from TDOT to purchase a flight simulator in support of their new rotor wing aviation program that you recently approved. It's good to see that moving forward. Their football coach, Will Healy, won the Eddie Robinson Award, which means he was last year's college football top head coach in Division I football championship subdivision, and they have indeed made a remarkable turn. And Alyssa, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but it's been exciting to see that for us. Austin Peay State University Professor of French Literature, Dr. Karen D. Sorensen, won the top state award, the Jacqueline Elliott Award for Service in Higher Education, given by the Tennessee Foreign Language Teaching Association. And finally, Student History Organization, Phi Alpha Theta, won the Nels C. Clevin Award for the Best Chapter of the Year in Division IV. At ETSU, Dr. Gregory Ordway, a faculty member in the Quillen College of Medicine, has discovered a potential new treatment for depression. It involves a drug already approved by the FDA, and in preliminary studies and trials, there are very good indications. So we would encourage you to look for new studies and publications around that treatment for depression. As you're also aware, ETSU has partnered with a major health system in the region to open a center for treating patients who are addicted to prescription drugs. I don't know if there's a more pressing issue today nationally. It's good to see them do this work. The center, the Over Mountain Recovery Center, opened its doors in September, but the work for the faculty in this area has been well recognized nationally for quite some time. ETSU's College of Public Health has been nationally recognized for its innovative curriculum that provides real-world hands-on experience for public health students. The college recently created a campus near ETSU where public health students are taught the knowledge and skills necessary to work in almost any environment, especially the kinds of low-resource environments that you might find in rural, challenging areas. ETSU is also the home to a laboratory for a K through 12 school, where 2 of their students recently earned a perfect score of 36 on the ACT exam. And Brian, if you want to share those with me, I'll recruit those students while we're at the meeting. So that is great to hear. Researchers at ETSU have gained national attention for their work with spiders. And have discovered that animals are able to instantly reset their biological clocks. And I think anyone working with spiders deserves encouragement. Brian, that is great. MTSU was named for the first time, was listed in the top 50 best for vet schools for the Military Times. And I think, and Mike, I think you'd agree with me, some remarkable work is going on around veterans at all of our universities in the state, and it is great to see. MTSU was also the top 4-year university in the state in reverse transfer. And Sydney reported that applications for the fall of 2018 admissions are trending positively up. And finally, the university has started the process to update its Quest for Success program. At Tennessee Tech, just last week in Indianapolis, the NCAA honored Tennessee Tech alum and board trustee Barry Wilmore with its Theodore Roosevelt Award. It's the highest honor given to any individual by the NCAA. Phil, congratulations. That is great. Also last week, Tennessee Tech's mascot, the Awesome Eagle, won first place in the 2018 Universal Cheerleaders Association National Mascot Competition. And I would be interested, Phil, to hear exactly what they do. Is it a? It is great to see. I wasn't aware of that. It's great news. There's a lot of construction going on at Tennessee Tech. And just a brief overview for you. The Roden University Center is on schedule for completion in the fall of 2018. The Science Building broke ground early in November and undeniably will be a transformative building for students, and they expect that to be ready in 2020. The new Student Recreation Center is underway and on schedule for 2019. The historic Jerry Whitson transformed into a one-stop service center for protective students and parents, and that process is complete. And parking expansion, always a critical issue for all of us, and I have to tell you, a remarkable challenge. And I'm not sure we talk enough about the critical role of parking. Just opened a new 600 parking space on the west side of their campus. In terms of return on investment, I know something that this group has talked about frequently. When you look at early career pay, Tennessee Tech is number 1 among public universities in Tennessee with an average of $51,000 annual salary. Ranks top in the state. Tech also holds the highest return on investment for state public universities. And if you look at a 20-year net return on investment, Tech offers a $369,000 return on investment from college education, which is fabulous. In terms of strategic planning, Tech will unveil an outline draft of its new strategic plan with its Board of Trustees in late March. And then more than 500 campus community members have engaged in the strategic planning process with Tech and been a part of that as they have looked for shaping the direction for the future for the university. Finally, for the University of Memphis, I would share with you that we are also wrapping up a new strategic plan. That process we will have completed in the next couple of months. We will share that as Tennessee Tech is doing pretty much on the same timeline. And our plan really is a 5-year projection. We think that projecting much further out, given the pace of change, is difficult to do these days. And so we're looking at probably updating these plans on a more frequent basis. In the most recent U.S. News and World Report rankings, for universities, we had 20 of our graduate programs ranked nationally. That is an all-time high for us. We're pretty excited about that. We also had all 5 of our online programs that are available to be ranked, that qualify to be ranked nationally by U.S. News and World Report. And our nursing program was ranked 15th nationally. They moved up 86 spots since last year. We're not going to share how that happened. I'd love to talk to you about why that happened. It is remarkable the work that they're doing on the graduate nursing front online. It's been fabulous. We did a recent process of moving forward with a renovation of part of Wilder Tower for student recruitment. We're doing that on the 12th floor, and we'll have that complete in time next year for renovation or for recruitment for students. We have a new partnership you may have read about between the U of M and the National SAS Group on data analytics. We're excited about what that's going to provide, not just for the University of Memphis, but also the community of Memphis. We recently opened the Lori Walton Family Basketball Center, and if you are in Memphis and have a chance, I would encourage you to stop by and take a look at the center. It is stunning. It is a fabulous facility. We would argue, at least for this year, it'll be the best in the country. But somebody else will build another one next year. But this is a tremendous facility, and we are so grateful to Bill, Lori, and Nancy for helping us with this. So if you get a chance, come by and we'll share it. This October, we broke ground for the new Scheit Family Music Center. Talked with Rudy last week. We were really excited about getting that moving and moving that forward at a rapid pace. We are partnering with the National Civil Rights Museum on a series of programs, but specifically an MLK 50 symposium on civil rights and economic equity. That'll happen in Memphis this spring. If you're around, you may want to catch some of that, where it's going to be a stunning program. We actually have on display as a part of that, Avron Fogelman has made available to us Martin Luther King, Dr. King's speech, the one "We Shall Overcome." We'll actually be displaying that over the course of a series of months, and we'll do some advertising, let people know that we have that available. In December, we launched a new additive manufacturing lab, and that lab will feature 3D printing, but also facilitates our relationship with FedEx, and that lab will open in late spring, early summer. We have a range of building projects over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not going to go through those with you, but I did want to share one. We launched a campaign to upgrade our swimming facility to a natatorium. It will be the Mike Rose Natatorium. We're raising $6 million on that effort. We have raised $2 million so far and anticipate that we will have the additional $4 million for that in the next several months. And then finally, we are upgrading our football facility. The initial contract on that was let, and that process is beginning and will continue over the course of the next 2 years. So thank you very much. I'll stop there for any questions. And also let me encourage the other presidents, the LGI presidents, if I missed anything additional that you want to share, feel free to join in now. Okay.
Questions for President Rudd?
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that concludes the system reports portion of our meeting. We're next going to turn to the agenda items. Item Roman numeral number 1, post-secondary education authorization. I would call on Julie Woodruff, please, ma'am, if you would. And just fellow commission members, unless there's an objection from someone, what I propose we do is to let Ms. Woodruff present items 1A through D, and then at the conclusion of her presentation, entertain a motion to adopt all the recommendations. Is there any objection to that? Okay. Thanks, Ms. Woodruff.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, members of the Commission. It's great to be here and to present you with your first action item here in our new space. So that's wonderful. Your first action item, as Chairman Cope mentioned, is made up of 4 components. The first is reauthorization. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions met at its January 11th meeting and voted to recommend to you the institutions listed in Section 1A of your materials be reauthorized for the period of March 1st, 2018 through February 28th, 2019 as follows. 39 institutions would receive regular authorization, 6 temporary authorization, and 5 conditional authorization. Of those on conditional authorization, 2 of those, Dark Horse Institute and Goodwill Industries of Middle Tennessee, are being recommended for conditional for failure to meet the minimum financial requirements. This means that they would be required to submit quarterly financial statements for the next year. 3 of the institutions, Lab 4 Professional Development Center, Oak Ridge Regional Training Center, and Tennessee School of Religion, are being placed on conditional for needing to provide some additional materials before their reauthorization application is complete. The materials provided were sufficient to go forward with a recommendation of reauthorization. However, there are a few items that just need to be supplemented before it is complete. Those institutions will be returned to returned to regular authorization once they've provided all needed materials. So that's component 1. Components 2 and 3 are initial authorization of new institutions and approval of new or revised programs. It has been recommended that 8 new institutions listed in Section 1B of your materials and 8 new or revised programs listed in Section 1C of your materials be authorized and approved respectively. As an aside, I want to bring to your attention one of our new institutions as it presented a novel issue for our agency, and I'm happy to bring this to you for your consideration today. So in October of 2017, Ross University School of Medicine contacted the Tennessee Higher Education Commission to ask us what it could do to legally operate a temporary location in Tennessee. Lincoln Memorial University joined in those conversations because Lincoln Memorial had agreed to offer Ross University or allow Ross University to lease some of its space in Knoxville. Ross explained that because of Hurricane Maria that occurred earlier that year, their campus on the island nation of Dominica had been devastated to the point that they could no longer continue education at that site. The institution was in need of a temporary location. While it had secured a temporary site on a cruise ship, that was not an ongoing arrangement it could sustain and needed a place to begin its newest term, which was going to be January 8th of this year. As I mentioned, Lincoln Memorial University did offer the space to the institution. THEC considered the situation, made a determination that in order to operate, Ross University would need to submit an application and obtain authorization. Ross University did that. They also requested conditional authorization so that they could begin instruction January 8th. Through the application, we learned that Ross was planning to offer its basic sciences year 1 and 2 courses at the campus in Knoxville. Its years 3 and 4 students would not be placed in any clinical rotations in Tennessee, and all students would be enrolled through the campus in Miramar, Florida. While reviewing the application, we contacted a couple different agencies. First, we contacted the Tennessee Medical Board, and we learned that the Medical Board is not required to approve the programs that Ross University is offering. Additionally, we contacted the United States Department of Education. We confirmed that Ross is a recipient of Title IV federal student aid and that it is accredited by the Dominica Medical Board, which is a medical board that has been determined to use comparable standards to those used by a United States medical school accreditor. And as such, that accreditor is recognized as comparable by the US DOE. On December 22nd, Director Krause issued a letter granting the institution conditional authorization so that it could begin its instruction January 8th. In the letter, the authorization was temporary and made for the express purpose of allowing for the unprecedented circumstances wrought by Hurricane Maria. So with that, I present the new institutions to you. We do have a representative from Ross University here if you have some questions for them. So if you have any questions, I'd open that up now.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll just say, from the director's point of view, I think the commission knows how seriously we take our role as a regulator. And no one takes that more seriously than Dr. Bellard Chase and Julie and their division. There is also the human side. And this was a group of several hundred American citizens in a very untenable situation. Lincoln Memorial University's offer, we thought, was the right one. And it does work within the constraints of our statutes and rules. There's no doubt it's an extraordinary circumstance. And as the memo that I copied each of you on, and we have a copy here today presented, is clearly temporary in nature and wrought by something that none of us could foresee.
Yes, ma'am.
A quick question. What is the length of time? When will this come to a conclusion, this relationship with Lincoln Memorial?
Okay. Well, the relationship with Lincoln Memorial is based on their lease. The term of the authorization that you'll be voting on is until February 28, 2019. So the amount of time that Ross wants to be here, I would say, and they can certainly chime in here if they would like, is as little as possible. They want to get back to Dominica. That's where their campus is. That's where they want to be. They certainly will be here for the term that began January 8th and will continue to work to return to the island. I understand from my discussions with the institution that there are quite a few hurdles to overcome. There's infrastructure issues throughout the island as well as the buildings on the campus itself.
Julie, if you don't mind, I think we'd like to hear from a representative.
Okay, certainly. Dr. Owen,
From the podium, please.
you can come
Could
up
you go to
here.
the podium, please? I will. Mhm. And sir, if you would state your name and what your position is for the record, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Bill Owen. I'm the Chancellor, Dean, and Executive Officer at Ross University School of Medicine. I am best described as a lifelong academic. Some of you know me here from my tenure at the University of Tennessee, where I was Chancellor of the Health Science Center. If I may have 2 or 3 minutes, I'd like to put what you folks are voting on in a bit of context. As the executive leader, I think it's important to understand my philosophy, which I heard repeatedly in the room here, and that is that faith, family, and educational drive personal attainment and likewise social progress. And that is the philosophy within our organization. We feel that medical education is not a privilege, but rather is a right for any student who is adequately prepared and likewise driven to do so. We're a very large medical school. We are the second largest medical school in North America, albeit we're talking about students during the first 2 years of their medical education, which is the basic sciences, before they go on to clinical training. We're still talking about a large number of students. That group alone is about 1,200. We graduate 3,000 physicians total, with 16,000 alumni distributed throughout the United States. 90% are Americans, 9% are Canadian, 1% from other countries. As you heard, in October, Hurricane Maria came through the portion of the Caribbean where our first 2 years of education occurs. Devastated the island, Category 5 hurricane. As an example of how much damage was done, we lost about 65% of our buildings. And what do I mean by lost? Totally destroyed, or to the point where it is unsafe to not just simply occupy them, but to walk near them for fear of something falling on you. So here I am with about 1,200 students with no way to continue their medical education. And you know how intense it is and how disruptive that would be. The first intervention, we put them on a cruise ship. We created a floating campus. Cruise ships are nice, but they're not great to study in for 3 months at a time. Imagine taking a test, seasick, and cramped quarters. So medically and psychologically, it was unsuitable to continue there. We reached out for help. I got lots of responses. I had many new friends. But I think the response that resonated, of course, most with me, being a Tennessean, was the one that I received from here, from the folks at LMU. And it was such a wonderful coincidence. Not a coincidence. I'm unashamed of being very spiritual and faith. It was Providence, folks. A purpose-built campus for us to continue creating doctors. And what do? Our doctors go into primary care. They practice in low-resource areas. And they look like this room. They look like America. So This commissioners moves forward. I want to thank you, not just for us, but for America, providing what this country needs, and that is primary care doctors who are willing, want to go work in low-resource areas where people don't have the kind of health equity that we like to take pride in the United States. So I'll take questions, Mr. Chairman. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Owen, these, Dr. Owen, these
Yes, ma'am.
are your first and second year students only,
Yes, ma'am. Those are only our first 2 years.
and it's 1,200 students.
Yes, ma'am.
This is really a question for someone else, but I'm just curious how Lincoln Memorial can absorb that many more medical students. I assume they have their own medical students or they have their own facilities. How are they going to manage that?
That was my first response hearing from the president. And it's really almost like a marriage in that they are leasing us space. Mr. DeBusk had acquired space in anticipation of creating a satellite campus for LMU's medical school. And it is roughly about 160,000 square feet, had not been built out. At our request, it was built out, so we're leasing it from him. But the other half of that question, which I think I'm hearing, is how are you going to teach all these folks? Our faculty are moving here, or should I say have moved here. It's rather interesting. It's a matter of perspective. They're complaining to me about how cold it is. And would I buy coats, which I did not. But all of that said, we are coexisting. So Mr. DeBusk, the LMU team, is still on their campus. We're leasing this space, hopefully for just a few months, while the infrastructure is being rebuilt on Dominica. But I just learned last week, as a final point, a sense of how much devastation, how much ambiguity there is, which is why the Department of Education said, take a year before you rush back. We want to make sure it's safe for your students. The airline that we use to get to and from declared bankruptcy. And so we don't even now have a way to fly in there. But my chairman said, Bill, do you know about running airlines? So who knows, I might be doing something different.
And what will you do in February of 2019 if Dominica is not up and running and able to take you back?
That is a wonderful question about what Plan B, C, and D looks like. And so we're having very intensive conversations right now with the Department of Education asking, what can we do as a next step? I wish I could tell you, ma'am, I just don't know. I've got teams who are permanently in Dominica working to rebuild, working with the government to help them. We are I describe us as an American medical school that is in the Caribbean. So I'm also having conversations with the leadership of other Caribbean islands, which I'm not at liberty to mention, who are interested in, I'll describe it, coaxing us to go there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Dishner, did you?
Ms. Covenant asked my question.
Oh, great, okay, good, good. Other questions of Dr. Owen?
I have none of Dr. Owen, but I would ask that this body receive an update at some time in the near future on how it's going and what the status is.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we will. And I'll ask, of course, Dr. Bellard, Chase, and Julie. I think it's fair to ask for an interim update by our May meeting, because it sounds like there's some developing things even between now and then as part of your presentation at the May meeting, if you'd be willing to bring that to the commission.
I certainly will. We have routine reports that we provide to our accreditors, including the Department of Education, ED. So we'd certainly be willing to provide that information to you as well.
Thank you, Dr. Owen. Let me make sure. Other questions of Dr. Owen? If not, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Julie?
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
And I would add, I believe it was yesterday, a member of our committee, Mr. Steve South, did complete a site visit to the LMU campus, and my understanding, I haven't gotten a full report, was that it was wonderful. that the facilities are very, very nice. So that's great to hear. So if there are no more questions on the first three components, I'll move on to component 4, which is optional expedited authorization. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions is recommending 12 institutions as listed in your materials in Section 1D for optional expedited authorization. So, in summary, very quickly, we've mentioned a lot of things. The committee is recommending reauthorization of 50 institutions as listed in Section 1A, authorization of 8 new institutions as listed in Section 1B, approval of 8 new or revised programs as listed in Section 1C, optional expedited authorization of 12 institutions as listed in Section 1D of your materials, and I'm happy to answer any questions. If not, I would request that the recommendation of the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions be accepted.
Thank you, Julie. What's the will of the commission? So we have a motion to adopt the recommendation. Is there a second? Commissioner Coben with the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? If not, the motion carries. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next, item 2 is policy updates with respect to master plans, and I would call on Patty Miller, please.
And I'd like to briefly introduce Patty to the commission. I'm uncomfortable that Patty is sitting so close to the MTSU leadership team. They have not forgiven us for stealing Patty. Patty is, I would say, she would argue with me, but Patty is probably one of the most respected higher education architects in the state. And we knew that in order to move forward with our new Focus Act responsibilities in the area of capital, we needed an in-house capital leader. And so Patty brings to us nearly 30 years of higher education facilities management experience, and her charge is to make sure that the focus transition and the tens of thousands of square feet that it entails goes smoothly, and she is off to an incredible start, as evidenced by she's already realized some things in our policy that need changing. So Patty.
Thank you very much, Mike. Good morning, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, members of the Commission. I am Chief of Facilities Planning here at THEC. I'm delighted to be here, and it's a pleasure to meet with you this morning. We are presenting a revision to the master plan policy. It was last reviewed and revised last May of 17 for the purpose of refining the procedures necessary for conducting, updating, and revising a master plan, especially considering the LGIs coming on board with their severance. It also established a 10-year planning cycle that is in coordination with Building Commission policy. That is the time frame within which the master plans must be reviewed. And so it's a longer time frame, and it was beginning that process of establishing how the LGIs would have that flexibility. It was the basis for considering future project funding and approvals by THEC and the State Building Commission. It asserted the THEC's requirement that master plans be updated on a regular basis to be considered for state capital outlay and maintenance funds. With the transitioning of the LGIs now to the independent capital project management, THEC has the opportunity to focus on campus master planning as a part of the overall strategic planning process. The policy update recognizes master planning as a continuous planning process and supports the flexibility needed to respond to changing planning environments. There are 3 primary changes that are in this policy. The first defines 3 types of master plan actions. The first is a master plan, a comprehensive document that must be updated every 10 years. It requires the review and approval of the THEC Commission prior to the submittal of the State Building Commission. Master plan update is the second type, and we're going to see an excellent example later on with the Austin P master plan update. A master plan update is consistent with the objectives and concept of the original master plan, but has the types of substantial changes that require a new master plan book. In our guidelines, we recommend that it will be completed by the original master plan designer. The third type is a master plan amendment. This is limited in scope and consistent with the objectives of the original plan, such as properties adjacent to the campus, acquisition areas, traffic studies, housing or athletic studies, workforce development, or, for example, moving a building building site or refining a building program. The second big change is that the executive director is given the authority to approve updates and amendments to the master plans that were previously approved by the commission. In the case of an update, the executive director is required to report the action to the THEC commission, and it may be presented to the commission for your review at the discretion of the executive director and the commission. The third revision is that a full master plan, the update, or the amendments are required to be performed in accordance to the THEC guidelines. The guidelines will be developed and updated regularly by the THEC staff, and so that will be in place to complement the policy. And I'm just going to mention a few things in the guidelines that correspond to the policy. The guidelines recommend a review of the status of the master plan every 2 years, and this can be in the form of a report. If needed, we can visit the campuses. It emphasizes the engagement by THEC in the master planning process. There's a recognition that the master plan is a direct link and documentation between the institution's strategic plan, facilities planning, and the ultimate capital appropriation request. It is also the reference document for all State Building Commission actions for the institution. It emphasizes that all capital improvement requests will be reviewed for conformity with the master plan. And that concludes the summary of the changes, and we appreciate your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Miller?
Ms. Miller, just one question. I noticed one of the consistent changes we made was changing from the word facility to campus. Did we
Yes.
determine that there was a different scope with the use of the term campus?
Yes, we talked about that in-house and also with Art Liskey, who completed the Austin P plan and a number of other master plans, has worked with THEC along the way. He felt that the word campus was more directly related to strategic planning, so it was more encompassing rather than just talking about buildings. And certainly with any master plan, you want to be looking at all of the issues related to strategic planning, so it's a more comprehensive word.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, hearing none. What's the will of the commission?
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Is there a second? Second. Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all who are in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much, Ms. Miller.
Thank you.
Okay, next, item 3, we'll have the Drive to 55 progress update. Dr. House.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Mr. Kraus, members. I'm very happy to be here presenting an update on the Drive to 55, as well as a brief update on the variety of programs going on across the state that we often talk so much about, just to sort of touch point, check in, and see where we are. Special welcome to Kara. I also like to do math in my free time, so this is going to be wonderful having you on the commission. Just a brief reminder that the Drive to 55 is Governor Haslam's educational attainment goal for the state of Tennessee, that by the year 2025, 55% of Tennesseans will have a post-secondary credential. We're currently at about 40%, which when I started giving these presentations, we were much lower than that, so this is wonderful, but I was always able to say in the next 10 years, well, it's currently 2018, so in the next 7 years, we still have a ways to go from this 40%, but what I'll discuss on my next slide is that we are very, very much on our way to 55%, and with regard to that 40% metric, the numbers are literally being crunched as we speak using census data, and my hypothesis is that we will see even more growth using updated census data, so please stay tuned for that. In 2015, THEC put together the Master Plan for Higher Education, which is a large document. We've talked about it at length, and as a part of that document, we projected the number of degrees that would be produced by higher education throughout the state over a decade, from 2015 to 2025. My team worked very hard to update these projections in 2017, this past year, using actual data from 2015 and 2016 to reflect the actual degrees that were produced in those 2 years since we started with the projections. As you can see, the blue line, which are the more recent projections, the red line are the projections from 2015. In 2015 and 2016, the state of Tennessee in total over those 2 years produced more degrees than THEC had projected, which is wonderful. So if we think about the hard work that's going on our campuses, the emphasis our campuses and our systems are placing on completion, the number of degrees is going up. And if it continues to go up and that trend continues to, if we continue to outpace the trend line or outpace the projection, we are very well situated to get to 55% in the next 7 years, which is wonderful news to share. However, when we think about 55% attainment across the state, an important other metric to think about is the more localized measure of attainment, thinking about attainment county by county. And we often say, if we get to 55% as a state, but, for example, all of the growth happened in the big metropolitan areas of the state, while that is a success, did we really accomplish what we were hoping to accomplish? And this very much relates to what Mike mentioned initially when we first arrived here today about distressed counties. If you were to overlay the map that he presented with this map, you will see that many of the distressed counties, all of the distressed counties, have very low educational attainment. So while it's very, very positive statewide with regard to the number of degrees being produced, the rate of attainment is increasing statewide, we can't forget about the variation that exists across the state in urban and rural areas, in each of the 3 grand divisions, et cetera. It's very different county by county. Okay. Everybody's favorite topic, FAFSA completion. As we sit here, today is the Tennessee Promise FAFSA filing deadline, so I would imagine that there are many students, counselors, families frantically filing their FAFSAs. I hope that they are not frantic because I hope they did it already, but we will likely see an influx of FAFSAs come in today by 11:59 p.m. Very, very good news that I think is probably familiar to everyone. Tennessee is #1 in the nation for FAFSA filing. We are currently, as of this current cycle, #1 in the nation, and we have grown in our FAFSA filing since the inception of Tennessee Promise, which is wonderful news. So our FAFSA filing rate for the class of 2017, you can see there, was over 73%. We are well on our way to exceed that this year, which is wonderful news as well. I get to do the fun slides. I get to do all the good news. It should not go without mentioning, however, that none of this happened coincidentally or none of this happened through luck or by mistake with regard to the FAFSA filing. The staff on many of Troy's staff members, the Advise TN staff, the Gear Up staff, as well as many THEC outreach specialists are very, very intentional and very strategic about how they interact with students around the FAFSA, what schools they visit, how they intervene. And something that was new this past year were 2 very targeted FAFSA Frenzy days. There was one date in October and one date in January where many of us in this room, as well as many community members, many other staff members from the state, descended upon high schools to help students file FAFSAs. So very, very intentional, very, very strategic. Our current FAFSA filing rate is about 60%, so we are well on our way to hit that 73+%. I did receive a dispatch from across the street in Parkway Towers that the Tennessee Promise FAFSA filing rate is substantially higher than that as of today, and will go even higher by this evening, so that's really exciting. The other side of that coin, however, Russ mentioned verification earlier, but even before we get to the point of verifying, we were curious as a staff and with our collaborators over at the Department of Ed, who is not filing a FAFSA? So we have all these wonderful stories about FAFSA filing and this wonderful data that plays the story out, but who is not filing a FAFSA? And the answer is, unfortunately, not particularly surprising. About 18% of high school seniors do not file a FAFSA, and those students are disproportionately male, non-white, and low income. So as we are being strategic in our interventions around FAFSA, it's important to think about student subgroups as well as school level characteristics. So when we're intervening with these students at these particular schools, really thinking about those who may have additional need, to say nothing of this whole issue of verification, which is a whole other story. So if Jason Lee could wave, Jason on the THEC research team, if anybody has questions about the non-filers, he has really been the mastermind behind all of this. The college going rate is another popular metric to tout. This is actually an old slide, but it makes the point of about the effect of promise. We, in 2014, about 58% of high school seniors enrolled immediately after high school into higher education. In fall of 2015, which is the first year of Promise, that proportion increased significantly and substantially to 62.5%. This is an outdated slide. I apologize for that. But what's important to note is that we are at a new normal. The 61, 62, 63% college going rate is the new normal. So that jump, you all know I'm always very careful about causal language, so I will not go on the record as saying that Promise caused that, but Promise very much had to do with that change in the college going culture and college going conversation.
Promise caused that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Can't win. Okay. So, thinking about enrollment in higher ed across the state, Promise may or may not have had something to do with the increase in college going rate that we just mentioned, but what's important to think about talking about a college going rate is that that measure reflects only high school age students, those who are graduating from high school and enrolling seamlessly into higher ed. When we think about the composition of the work of the higher education pool in general, all of the students who are enrolled in higher ed, generally speaking, enrollment has been relatively flat over the past few years. What's important to note and what's interesting to note is how the composition is changing. More students of traditional age are enrolling, while many adults, because the economy is so strong in Tennessee, are not enrolling in higher education. So while the main number is the same, the base number, the composition is shifting a bit. That will likely change substantially with the implementation of Community College Reconnect in the fall, and Jessica will talk much more about that later today. I don't want to get in her way on that. But thinking about the effect of the economy and the workforce and the strength of the economy here in the state really does affect who is enrolling. Just some quick demographics. None of these are particularly surprising in that they are not different from higher ed enrollment patterns nationwide. Higher education in Tennessee is predominantly female. About 30%, 27% of students are students of color. Close to half of our students are low income, 46% are Pell Grant eligible. That is the federal need-based grant that is available to students who are low income. And to my prior point, only 27% of students are adults. That my money is on that shifting in light of Reconnect, but right now it's only about a third of students who are adults. The average ACT score of students who enroll in higher education is just over a 21. It's a 21.1. The average ACT across the entire state of test takers is about a 20. It's just that not all of those students actually enroll in higher education. Among those who enroll, the average is about a 21. And perhaps unsurprisingly, liberal arts, health sciences, business administration are the top majors in which students enroll. Dr. Deaton spoke about this a few minutes ago with regard to sales and co-rec remediation, but what is presented on this slide here is the overall need for remediation among community college students. In 2011, almost 77% of students entering community colleges required some kind of remediation, be it math, English, reading, writing, whatever it may be. Remediation creates a barrier to so many students. It is a financial barrier. It is a time barrier. They often do not receive credit for the work that they're doing in these courses. In the spirit of being innovative and with the support of many external parties, the governor staffed the General Assembly. That's when sales was implemented, as well as the great work that was going on in Chattanooga to pilot all of this. And since then, not only has mathematics remediation declined, but remediation overall has declined. Now, much of that is driven by the math remediation, but this is a very positive story about the innovations around the different ways to support students who might need a little bit of extra help to make sure that they are not losing time and money on their way to a degree. And just to highlight, and again, Russ did this, so I'll be very quick with this particular slide, but sales has grown dramatically since its inception in 2011 to serve over 66,000 students have at some point in their senior years of high school been touched by sales, which is wonderful. There are 281 high schools that participate in sales. All 13 community colleges are partners in sales, and this is an estimate for the number of seniors taking sales in their senior year currently. About 19,000 students are taking sales right now. So very, very positive information there. The pass rates Russ mentioned earlier, students who are taking all 5 of the sales modules, the vast, vast, vast majority are passing them. We have learned through some other work that these students are less likely than their peers to enroll in remediation once they enter post-secondary, which is sort of the point of sales. they're comparably achieving peers, right? Not the 36s on the ACTs. But those who are of a similar academic achievement level, they are less likely, the SAIL students, to enroll in remediation, and they are more likely to pass credit-bearing math by the spring of their first year in community college. So that is a very, very positive early indicator of the effect of SAILs. Okay. Very quickly, because Dr. Deaton spoke about this as well, persistence is up overall. So we've talked a lot about access and affordability and getting students in the door. How do we keep them there? And how do we make sure that they persist and they succeed and they graduate? Generally speaking, persistence is up across all institution types. At the community colleges in particular, this is very much driven by the Promise students, and Dr. Deaton presented on a bit of this earlier. The persistence rates among the Promise students are quite high. That third bullet there, the year-to-year, fall 15 to fall 16 rate of retention was almost 20 percentage points higher than a non-Promise student. And my numbers in that fourth bullet look a little bit different than Dr. Deaton's. Dr. Deaton was able to pick up 2 additional percentage points of transfer, so I'll take it. In this case, I'm happy to be the one with the outdated slide. We will learn a lot more in the next few weeks about what happened to that first cohort after their 5th semester. So Promise is a 5-semester program. The 5th semester for that first group of students was this past fall. So we will see a lot more transfer, we will see more completions, we'll see after a full time with one cohort what is actually happening to those students. So that should be within the next few weeks, we'll know a lot more about that. Very quickly, Chairman Cope mentioned affordability and borrowing in his opening remarks. Since the inception of Tennessee Promise in 2015, student borrowing has declined, particularly at the community colleges, which is a very positive story when we think about all of the debt burden and the loan default issues that many students face, particularly those students who enter higher education, they take on debt and they do not complete a degree. And for many students, the amount of their debt is quite low, but they still cannot pay it. So this is a very, very positive thing with regard to the proportion of students, again, particularly those at the community colleges, who are borrowing, and these are federal loans. I cannot speak to private loans, but these are federal loans. Yes, sir.
Any estimate of what the dollar value of those loans that are not being originated is?
I can find that for you. I don't have that off the top of my head. I do know that in the main...
Well, I'm disappointed. I just count on you to have it.
Well, I know. I'll stop by later. I'll find it.
Thank you.
But in the main, we talk about borrowing... Oftentimes, you hear the anecdote of, I borrowed $300,000 and I can't get a job. While that is very serious and very terrible for that particular student in his or her future, that is not necessarily the rule. That is more the exception. The amounts borrowed are typically much, much lower than that, but they do still cause harm to students down the line if they can't repay them in particular. So I'm happy to follow up with you on that. Okay. And... very quickly, with regard to Promise and some of our other state aid initiatives, each of these could really be its own presentation, so I'm happy to follow up with any amount of detail with regard to Promise or the lottery scholarships or the TSAA, the Student Assistance Award for students who are low income. But as of November 1st, over 62,000 students signed up for Promise. Today is the FAFSA deadline, so we will know a lot more on Monday about who remains eligible for Promise. I mentioned that Cohort 1 just finished up their final semester of eligibility, so we will learn a lot more about whether they graduate, whether they transfer, whether they enter the workforce. Now that the program is at full maturity, we still estimate, the cost is still estimated, is Pete and Tim here? Yeah, it's still an estimate, this is not in stone, but at maturity, the program has cost between $32 and $36 million, which is right on the estimate, which is right what we thought it would cost. The lottery scholarship program continues to grow. This is the Hope Scholarship, the GAMS Scholarship, and the Aspire Award. We served approximately 71,000 students in fall of 16 to the tune of $270 million. We spend a lot of time on my team really digging into that data much further about who is getting the award, what's happening to them, et cetera. Happy to talk offline about that. Similarly, the TSAA is for students who are Pell eligible, essentially, in the state, students who are low income. Through the work of the governor's office and the General Assembly, we have been able to award more and more dollars over the past few years to those students. This program is chronically oversubscribed. There is more need than there are dollars available, and that has changed over the past few years, which is great. And I will stop there. I welcome any questions. Yes, Mayor Warren. Yes, sir.
Dr. House, way back on
Yeah.
sales.
Yes, ma'am.
A question. We started in 2011, and I love the statistics that you reported. More than 66,000 students have thus far been touched by sales, which that's a nice thing to consider. Do we track those students once they get into post-secondary, and do we know anything about their persistence
Yes,
rates?
ma'am. We do track them into post-secondary. We are working diligently to learn as much about these students as we can. What we do know is that they are more likely to enroll than their similar achieving peers. We know that they are more likely to enroll full-time, and they are less likely to need remediation, and that they are more likely to pass credit-bearing math. So there's a lot more nuance to that we'll need to share with you over time, but that's basically the story.
I think you said that in your original presentation. I didn't want you to think I wasn't listening. However, do we know anything, since it's been since 2011, do we know anything about graduation rates? I mean, further down the line. We know a lot of things about their first semester or year in higher education. Do we know anything further down the line?
The nuance on that, Commissioner Coben, is that the first state cohort of sales students really wasn't until 13. So it began as a 400-student pilot at Red Bank High School in 11, then progressed to 4 of our community colleges in 12, and then THEC became the funder and program officer in 13. I would say that it's fair to start asking about graduation rates next year for sure, because if you think of a senior in 13-14, they then enrolled in 14-15, and we will monitor that.
And one final question. What is the barrier to having sales in every single high school in the state of Tennessee? Money?
Money and capacity with regard to technology. And I would look to Mike if it's something different from that, but this is a hybrid model with an instructor and an interactive technology platform. So some of our schools that don't have robust Wi-Fi or computer labs would be boxed out of being able to do this.
And those might be most likely in some of those distressed counties that we've been looking at.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I got to visit a sales class at Antioch High School several years ago, and it really was fascinating. And the students seemed highly motivated, and because they could progress as quickly as they could, which gave them some power over what they learned. Thank you.
Mayor Warden.
Other questions for Dr. House?
Yes.
Mayor Warden.
With respect to the non-completers on the FAFSA, the demographics are not at all surprising. My question is a follow-up question. Have we dug down deeply to see at what, first of all, are they even beginning the application process? Or, and this is an observation that I have this purely anecdotal, not at all empirical. It's been about 5 years since I worked on one of these with a young man I was mentoring. He did great until you have to, it's still that section on there where they ask about your personal statement or something like that. Students freeze up there because many of their life stories are not very pretty.
Sure. Are you speaking about the FAFSA or a college application?
FAFSA.
So generally speaking, what we could do to begin to determine who begins a FAFSA and who doesn't, and I'm looking at Jason, we can figure out using the federal data who initiates a FAFSA but does not complete it. So to your question, we can see at what point they don't complete. If they initiate and don't complete, we can see that as well.
The key thing is, for those who are experts in testing, each question on a test has to be validated. If there's any question or any information sought that is not just absolutely critical, I know that we had to be done at the federal level.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. There is a pretty robust body of research that looks into that question exactly as you posed it. The FAFSA has almost 200 questions on it. How many could we cut, or how much can we reduce that form to make it less of a barrier? So I'm happy to share some of that with you offline.
And the observation may be made that, well, you're only talking about a small percentage, but based on my professional experience, that small percentage which does not complete in terms of societal disruption and cost? Because they don't end up in very pretty places.
Right, no, that's right. And the FAFSA is
So-
very much an indicator of a student's
Yeah.
likelihood of enrolling. So if we can get students past that hurdle of the FAFSA, it's infinitely more likely that they will enroll.
Thank you.
Dr. House, first, thank you for the very informative presentation. Couple of questions. One is, what do you see as your hypothesis, perhaps, of the biggest opportunities and threats still left for us
Sure.
to overcome? And then what should this body be focused on to help us achieve success?
I think as we've been talking about thank you for that question. I think as we've been talking about the FAFSA, what Dr. Deaton presented earlier about the FAFSA verification barrier is a huge opportunity to intervene with students as quickly as we can find out who has been flagged for verification, really working diligently with our outreach staff, the THEC, Advise TN, Gear Up outreach staff, as early as possible to get that designation remedied. I think also with the work that Jason has done and the work that my team has done around FAFSA non-filers, really being very intentional when we do these FAFSA outreach events, thinking about not only universally allowing students to receive that help when you are present, but really thinking about certain subgroups of students. I think the role of the commission has always been one of wonderful support, and I as a staff member at THEC am appreciative of that. And I guess I would defer to Mike if he has specific strategies with regard to commission engagement around FAFSA or around any other pressing issues.
I just know that many of you are out in your communities, and especially Dr. Dishner, who kind of does this as her life's work. But I think what we were most shocked by, and this is not to besmirch K-12 leaders, but when we began this effort, if I asked a principal, what's your FAFSA rate, they said, huh? And that wasn't a metric high schools were tracking. I'm not saying they're tracking it because we're tracking it for them now, but I will tell you they get an email from us every Monday with their FAFSA rate. So I think as you're out in your community, having that dialogue with K-12 districts and also to the presidents in the room, asking your local superintendents, how you doing on FAFSA? Can my financial aid office come help you? That's very powerful. When our FAFSA results come in tonight, we're going to see incredibly positive results, but I also think we're still going to see some counties where, for whatever reason, the needle isn't moving. And we, at this point, have deployed 8 full-time people. It completely consumes Troy and his team for about 8 weeks. If we can't get a local LEA to care about FAFSA, they won't move the needle.
Commissioner Johnston?
Dr. House, relative to the 55% goal, is the definition of educational attainment degrees, diplomas, and certifications? And if so, do we have the breakdown of where we're seeing the increase?
Yes. The goal includes certificates, associate degrees, and bachelor's degrees. So you mentioned certifications, which could be something that you receive from an industry, for example. Those are not counted toward the 55%. Whether they should be or shouldn't be is a whole other conversation. It relates to tracking and data and things like that. But the way that the goal is, as it stands for the state, is these are credentials that must be awarded by a post-secondary institution, certificate, associate, and bachelor's. We do know in the main that about 5% of our approximately 40% attainment rate is certificates. The remaining 35-ish% is made up of associate degrees and bachelor's degrees, and I'm happy to break that out for you and share that with you after we meet today.
Other questions? President Rudd.
This is actually for Mike. But Mike, is there a plan to track promise students through to universities and then look at differential success rates at universities as well, beyond the experience in college?
Yes.
Okay.
So all of the students who entered as a promise student are now tagged in the clearinghouse via our internal data. And then obviously TBR is tracking transfer rates. We can then see those students at any Tennessee public and actually in the vast majority of non-Tennessee publics.
we can see them
So
anywhere.
we'll be able to get, the LGI presidents will be able to get a report on, we could generate a report on how those students transition to our campuses.
Sure.
So we can look
Absolutely.
at differential rates. And,
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And we've had that conversation with some other system leaders and campus leaders as well, and I think that would be useful to everyone.
Any other questions?
Thanks,
Dr. House. Thanks very much. Okay, it is 11:45, and so at this point, unless there's any objection, we will stand in recess until 12:30 for lunch.
Commission members, lunch will be served on the 8th floor. We have elevators held, and of course, our other attendees, we hope you'll join us also.
What occurred above our heads.
Test.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to reconvene our meeting and take up item number 4, new academic programs, and I would recognize Betty Dandridge Johnson, please, ma'am.
I was prepared to say good morning, but now I'm going to say good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Chairman Cope. Mr. Kraus, and members of the commission. The new academic program approval request on today's agenda is Austin Peay's a request to launch their very first doctoral program in educational leadership, and Dr. Rex Gandy, the provost at Austin Peay State University, will be making the presentation. But I do want to say that THEC takes the responsibility of approving new programs at the staff level very, very serious, and this process for the Austin Peay EDD has undergone a very scrutiny review by both the THEC staff as well as external consultants. Thank you, and Dr. Gandy.
Mr. Chair, Executive Director Kraus, distinguished members of the Commission, it's my distinct honor to present to you today a request for a new Doctor of Education degree at Austin Peay State University. Here you see the basic parameters of our request, the number of hours involved, where we'll be housed. We will be seeking accreditation from the nationally recognized board, in this case, CAPE. And you see our estimated enrollment the first few years, ending up around 50 in a few years. These are the skills that we plan to teach our students. Of course, it's an educational leadership doctorate, so many administrators and teachers in K-12 systems, community colleges, and universities will be learning these skills that will enable them to move forward in their professional careers. We feel that this degree is needed in our area. Well, we've had the Ed Specialist degree for many years, and that's been very popular and productive. Over the years, we've gotten many requests for an EDD. Several folks in our area have traveled far and wide to pursue that degree, including many that went to Western Kentucky. So we feel that this will keep more Tennesseans going to Tennessee institutions. We researched the needs for this very carefully. We surveyed our local entities that would have people interested in this. We had a visiting team sponsored by THEC come and look at that, and we also hired an outside company, Hanover Research, to do a feasibility study. And we're all very positive to the placement opportunities for these grads. There are several other EDDs in the state. There are several unique features to ours. However, particularly the licensure option is not that common, and we plan to have that. We also have a very good place in the market as far as expense. Tuition is quite low for this program, so we think it'll be very affordable. And also, we think there'll be a military opportunity. We've gotten quite a bit of interest out of Fort Campbell personnel for pursuing a doctorate. Now, because this is our first degree, it's kind of like getting a car. You buy a car, but you really can't drive it on the street till you go get a license plate. So today, when you possibly approve this degree, we'll have bought the car. But we are not allowed by our accrediting agency to offer doctoral programs yet. So as soon as you hopefully approve this, we'll move forward, and we already have an application ready to go into our accrediting agency, the Southern Association, and we anticipate this summer being approved to move to the next level in SACs that will allow us to offer degrees. We'll have the license plate this summer. That's all I have in my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much. Any questions?
I do have a question. Dr. Gandy, I'm going to ask you this, and I know you have a great answer already, probably, for this question, but for clarification, The materials that we have say that there are 9 similar programs within 150 miles of Austin Peay, and that 200 of these degrees were conferred last year, in 2016. That sounds like saturation of a market, but I bet it's not, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to explain why this is what you really need to do and that you'll have an adequate number of students enrolled and graduating.
Basically, a lot of those degrees were people from our area who traveled far and wide to get that, and a lot of expense, and so we have a list of about 50 people interested to get the degree at Austin Peay. Also, the Montgomery County school system will probably be one of the main employers for this, and as you know, they are growing rapidly, so there's an increasing demand for the EDD. So we feel with the growth in Middle Tennessee that even though there are a lot of programs producing it, there's still a need for more institutions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Dishner.
I noted that you comment about having face-to-face classes, hybrid, and online, I think was the terminology.
Right.
So do you foresee that this program will ever be a totally online program, or do you foresee that it's going to be blended in its approach?
Initially, it will be blended. It's also going to be the cohort model, so we might have different cohorts following different delivery tracks, but initially it will be blended.
All right, and the second part of my question is, tell us a bit about the terminal project for the program. There will be a dissertation required as the termination of the program?
Yes, there it will be dissertation required. Of course, obviously our professors will guide those students and pick those projects. We're starting a rural education center. We think a lot of the focus could be on those counties that you showed earlier this morning, because we're in that area where that need is there. So we think there's a lot of opportunities for this research to contribute to the advancement of education.
Other questions? Quick question I had: Do you have any sort of indication whether or not you'll be able to cover the cost of this program with tuition?
There'll be a little bit upfront cost, but after a few years, the tuition will pretty much cover the cost. And also, a lot of those institutions mentioned earlier in that radius were, of course, private. There are not nearly that many public.
All right, if there are no other questions. Okay, yes, sir.
Real direct. When you say pretty much cover the cost, is it covered or not?
Yes, it covers it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, very good. Thanks very much for your presentation. Okay. All right, so the chair will entertain a motion now.
I'll move to approve.
Second. A motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Coben, I'm sorry, who made the motion, Secretary Hargett?
Whoever wants to take credit for it.
Okay, all right.
You put me down.
So motion by Secretary Hargett, second by Commissioner Coben. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries. All right, next item number 5 is the academic program review. Ms. Harpool.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cope, Mr. Krause, and members of the Commission. The report I'm presenting to you today generally reflects back on the academic program actions for the previous year. Let's see. It has 3 pieces. The academic program activity is a look at the new and terminated programs in a given year. Post-approval monitoring is the way we assess newly approved academic programs. For example, the EDD program that you just approved just now will appear in post-approval monitoring beginning in 2018 and will stay there until the program is mature. And then program productivity is a review that we do every 3 years. It looks at the complete inventory of mature programs at community colleges and universities. We analyze graduation rates as compared to national benchmarks that indicate financial viability and student experience. I want to take a minute to walk you through how programs get approved and then are held accountable for meeting standards. Basically, there's never a time in which THEC is not monitoring all programs at an institution. The first piece is the program approval. THEC approves new programs at universities through the Complete College Tennessee Act. TBR approves the new programs at community colleges. Then programs move into post-approval monitoring. When programs fall short of enrollment or graduation benchmarks that they've determined in the program approval process, they complete program productivity plans and may have their monitoring extended. Then for mature programs, THEC monitors them through the quality assurance funding formula, which lets us monitor assessment of content knowledge, program accreditation, and peer evaluations of programs. And then we have the academic program productivity report that's conducted every 3 years to make sure that programs are meeting those national graduation benchmarks. So 2017 was a fairly typical year for us as far as the number of new programs and program terminations. TBR typically has the most new programs, and they also normally have the largest number of termination, which makes sense as they're nimble and react quickly to changing needs in the job market. Not surprising, the largest number of new programs was in health professions, as the healthcare industry is growing rapidly across the state of Tennessee. So the new programs in 2017 follows the general trend that we've seen with new programs since 2013. There's been a slight decrease in 2013. However, the number of programs approved by THEC has over doubled what it was last year. Program terminations are down from 2016. However, 2016 was an extraordinary year for terminations, but we're still on an upward trend for terminations. So all in all, we usually end up with a net positive of programs, which was true in 2017 as it's been in previous years. The next piece is the post-approval monitoring. So in 2017, 76 programs are monitored through post-approval monitoring. The length of time that a program is monitored depends on the level. Certificates and associates are monitored for 3 years, bachelor's and master's are monitored for 5, and doctoral programs are monitored for 7. Post-approval monitoring evaluates programs based on enrollment and graduation benchmarks that the institutions establish for themselves as part of the program approval. Since TBR has the greatest number of new programs, they have the largest number of programs in post-approval monitoring. As you can see from the side, 33 of the 76 programs, or 43%, are meeting at least one of those benchmarks, either graduation or enrollment, and 32% are meeting both. At the community colleges, 11 programs of the 35 are not meeting either benchmark. 7 are due to exit monitoring, but all of them will be placed on extended monitoring for not meeting their benchmarks. The programs on the screen are programs that are either near the end of their monitoring cycle or have completed their monitoring cycle and are meeting no benchmarks. These are of particular concern as they're on track to be low-producing programs going forward. So when there'll be mature programs, but then immediately be placed on our low-producing program list. At the universities, 9 programs are not meeting either enrollment or graduation benchmarks. 5 university programs are due to exit monitoring this year. However, 2 will not exit as they're not meeting benchmarks and are on track to be low-producing programs. The programs on the screen are programs that are either, again, near the end or at the end of their monitoring cycle and meeting no benchmarks. Now, sometimes there are very particular, very understandable reasons to not meet benchmarks. For example, the U.S. Business Law LLM at University of Tennessee, Knoxville didn't meet their graduation benchmarks due to recent uncertainty around the ability to graduates to sit for the bar exam. Once that state regulation is sorted out and had nothing to do and to no fault of Knoxville for that, the students will be able to return to sitting for the bar exam, and we see no reason why they won't continue to meet those benchmarks going forward. So academic program productivity reviews all mature programs, and we do this every 3 years. This is not meant to be a measure of quality of the curriculum. That evaluation occurs by accrediting agencies and is kind of monitored through our quality assurance funding program. What we do here is we use national benchmarks to guide the analysis, and these are created to guide both financial viability and the health of the student experience. Being in a program that's supposed to be a cohort model with a cohort of 2 just doesn't have the same experience as what we anticipated when the program was approved. Pre-baccalaureate programs are expected to have an average of 10 graduates over a 3-year period. baccalaureate programs are expected to average an average of 10 graduates a year over a 5-year period. Master's programs an average of 5 over a 5-year period, and a doctoral an average of 3 graduates a year over a 5-year period. So of the over 1,300 mature programs, 111 didn't meet benchmarks. This is less than 10%, and when you take into account institutions that are meeting 80% of that benchmark, it drops to less than 8% are not meeting the benchmark. This is an improvement over when we ran the report in 2014. Then we had 196 programs that were not meeting benchmarks, so this is definitely a substantial reduction in that situation. Programs that sometimes land on the low-producing list are those that support the common curriculum. History, physics, math tend to have lower number of graduates, but these departments are absolutely necessary for the institution. Again, there's a lot of nuances as to why this could happen, but it's always something that we want to consider when we're looking at the health of an institution at the highest level. So there's 44 community college programs that are low producing. The 10 on the screen are some of concern. The first is the AST in teaching. Now, not all of the ASTs in teaching are incredibly low as far as meeting the percentage. The AST in teaching was implemented at all 13 community college. Since it was implemented, Cleveland State terminated the program due to low enrollment. Of the 12 remaining AST programs, 4 are low producing and 2 others are meeting the 11 average and are at 11 average graduates. The benchmark is 10, so they're just exceeding that benchmark. And 4 of the AST programs were low producing when we ran this report 3 years ago. Another area is the Advanced Integrated Industrial Technology Associate at Southwest. It has had trouble meeting benchmarks throughout its monitoring time, so when it was in the post-approval monitoring, and we're continuing to see that trend for the program. "35 baccalaureate programs are not meeting productivity benchmarks, and here are 5 that were of concern. All of these programs were also low producing in 2014, and the early childhood education program at TSU and the international studies at UT Martin were also low producing in 2011. And then 32 master's and doctoral level programs weren't meeting benchmarks. As you recall, the benchmark for the master's program is 5 graduates in a 5-year period, and the doctoral benchmark is 3 graduates, an average of 3 graduates in a 5-year period. All these programs were low producing in 2014, with the exception of early childhood education, which was in extended monitoring for post-approval monitoring. I bring that up to show you when programs are having trouble meeting benchmarks, before they're mature, it's difficult to overcome that once they're out of post-approval monitoring. You sometimes see the same programs that had trouble meeting benchmarks early in the program's creation continue to do so. So a couple key takeaways for us from doing this report. The approval of a program for multiple community colleges doesn't always lead to universal success. We've seen a number of the fine arts associates that have been in this situation, along with the teaching associates, that while the curriculum may be outstanding, the desire for a program may not be universal across all 13. Setting realistic benchmarks is really key in the program approval phase. Everyone is excited when new programs are being proposed and approved. Setting benchmarks 3 to 5 years down the road is certainly not an easy process. However, setting realistic benchmarks, because it is the benchmarks that these institutions establish for themselves, is really important to make sure that there's a viable chance of achieving these goals. And last, we have a net increase every year of programs at the same time that we have 10% of our mature programs that are low producing. So it necessitates a conversation regarding the overall health of the institution, since resources are finite, and we absolutely want institutions to develop new programs that are meeting the changing needs of the state. But along that comes with an evaluation of the program offerings at an institution. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. When I was reading this, as always, I was very impressed by the hard work that staff puts into these sorts of things. But after I finished, I thought, well, what do we do with it? Is this advisory? Is there a fiduciary role for THEC? Do the universities take this and use it for their decisions and the colleges? I just don't know what we do with it now that we have the information.
So THEC has the approval authority. However, the termination authority lies with the governing boards.
So I would say a couple things, Commissioner Roach, and Scott Sloan has delved into this on the legal side to talk about what the commission's actual authorities are. I think it is beyond advisory. First, 6 of the institutions have new boards who I think are looking at these catalogs rigorously. I think the single biggest point, though, is that the commission is a lot of our power lay on the front end for approving a new program. And so letting some of this guide that I think is important. I also think, and I know through some of the conversations I had with you all, there are specific programs the commission has concerns with right now. And if you look at the data, they are concerning. So barring some mitigating information we gather from the systems or the institutions, I've asked Scott to kind of give us a sense of what we can do. And if you could comment. No, the left side.
Red line.
It's an old building.
It's very important to have a general counsel that adapts quickly.
Thank you, Director Krause. Pursuant to 497202, which codifies all of THEC's duties, we have express authority to approve or disapprove any new program that is brought before the Commission. However, statute is silent on any kind of, at this time anyway, any termination authority that the Commission would have. Council would recommend, based on the concerns of this report and some of the data that is offered, that THEC's purview would certainly include a letter memorializing these concerns in writing from Chairman Cope with additional signatories as desired, and sending that communication to the respective chair of the governing board at the institution.
So in order to do that, I think probably what would make sense is if someone were to make a motion to that effect and then have it adopted unless there's some objection to that. President Rudd, did you have a comment?
The only comment I would offer is, really two things. One, I would encourage THEC to make this data readily available to all the boards and to forward this data to the boards as a part of the overall mission of the governing boards, since that authority rests with the boards currently. The other thing I would make you aware of, though, is our board is already aware of this data by searching on their own, and as a result of that, we've been asked to do program reviews. So we've been asked to present this data. We're actually going to be presenting some of this data in our March meeting on program reviews as a result of that. I think if you make that data readily available directly to boards, you may find boards take on the issue independently as well. So I just wanted to offer that thought, Mr. Chairman.
Who had a comment? Okay, Dr. Johnson, did you?
And I will add that we do provide this information to our board members, if I'm correct, on a regular basis. And this is readily often discussed. We go through curriculum revisions. We go through recruitment plan changes. We hold our campuses to standards as it relates to what THEC expectations are. But even further than that, right now, our board has, with our most recent workshop, is looking at a process where we not only look at how we address low-performing programs from THEC standards, but that we go a step beyond that, because, you know, it's a concern when you're looking at resource allocation for programs that are not performing as they should be. So this is a great concern for us across our campuses.
Thank you. Secretary Hargett.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could direct my question at Director Krause, when's the last time, or how often, answer whichever of these helps, how often or when's the last time an institution said, we're going to ask for that program to not be in existence anymore?
In terms of just we will self-initiate a termination, that happens on an annual basis.
Okay, but
even this year.
Okay, but how many of those? I mean, because I'm trying to figure out how long it takes because I see some of these things that move from down the chain and.
Here's I think maybe where you're going, Mr. Secretary. Within my 10-year span at THEC, and I certainly would look at Betty, we have never had, to my knowledge, a new program proposed, and then when it isn't working or meeting benchmarks 5 years later, the institution come back and say, we're not going to move forward with that. Was that the core?
That's much better said than how I tried to say it.
I cannot recall that time. Typically, the response is, let's try, and I think Dr. Johnson touched on some of this, let's alter a recruitment plan, let's adjust. That concerns the staff because the point of post-approval monitoring is to say what you said to the commission would happen. If it isn't happening, what action's being taken? And I think Councilor Sloan may have touched on an appropriate motion moving forward, which is the new programs the commission's approved in the last few years, if they're not working, receiving a true remedial action plan from the board.
I do think the new boards of the locally governed institutions is going to help in some of that. And I appreciate what Dr. Roy had to say. But I think that I would ask that Mr. Sloan, along with you, visit with the chairman of the respective education committees and let them know that this is an issue. I think they would be interested in empowering the Tennessee Higher Education Commission when they spot something like this to have the ability to do something about it instead of us sitting back and hoping somebody does something about it.
We will schedule those meetings immediately.
May I add to that point, though? I agree with Mr. Sloan's point about the letter and Secretary Hargett's notice of the fact that we probably need to do something more. My concern is, do we have a plan that if there is not action taken in a certain period of time, that there would be a ramp up or an escalation of activity? When I look at some of the numbers here of 13% or even 20 or 30, it just seems awfully low performance for us to continue to allow a program to be in place.
Commissioner Coven?
I think I'd like to ditto what you have just said, because when I look at 16% performance rate, 32%, and this is all across the board. This is both the UT system, the locally governed institutions. That's an embarrassment. And I think, first of all, before I say what I'm about to say, Dr. Johnson, I'd love to ask you, you said you already talked to your board about this. What do you say to your board about your master's in pharmaceutical sciences at the UT Center for the Health Sciences? I mean, how do you explain to them that you're continuing this program that is performing at 16%? And I don't mean to just single out UT, but
Right.
that's the one that happens to be in front of me right now.
And I understand, and there are some here that may be doctoral programs with one student or say like biosystems engineering, those kinds of programs that are an example of highly specialized types of programs that you would not normally see high enrollment at that level in those programs. And generally, in some cases, and I know my colleagues in academic affairs here could speak to some of this, we have some of those that don't necessarily add to the cost of the department to maintain those, at the doctoral level. But these are still concerns when year after year, if there is not a very identifiable reason for these programs continuing or in decline, you're having to look at what you can do about them. The other thing that I think is a challenge in some cases is that you can't, even if you feel like a program should be in a process of termination, you can't just wake up one morning and decide you're going to terminate a program. It's a process. And so going through that process is often a bit complicated. I don't know if Linda or maybe India, especially on the UT programs in those categories at the master's and doctoral level, especially if you might want to add to that.
The one that you pointed out relative to the master's program.
Ma'am, would you mind, if you're going to speak, come to the podium and identify yourself, please?
Poor thing.
My name is Linda Martin. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Student Success at UT. And I was just going to respond to the one that you pointed out in particular, and I can go through others as well. But the masters, the two masters program, the one with the 16%, those two are pretty unique in that they both represent programs where students begin in the PhD program and at some point decide they don't want to pursue the PhD, so that they complete the requirements for the master's. So they enter into the graduate program not intending to earn a master's degree, but decide not to complete the PhD and then complete the requirements for the master's, so that they do leave with a master's, but they don't continue with the PhD, if that makes sense.
That does. I understand. I have a feeling that many of these programs have an explanation like that. But I would love to have the schools go back, and anything that's under 50%, 60%, I don't know, that they provide a report. More paperwork, and I am sorry, but I really feel bad putting a stamp on these things when they look so low. Yes, Dr. Rudd.
I'd add a couple of comments, and I would encourage THEC to make this a part of a broader effort. That it really is about cost containment at universities. It's about administrative efficiency. And when you talk about cost containment, there are two primary domains in cost containment: administrative efficiency and program and content delivery. And this is one part of that. And I would encourage you to think of this as a larger piece of a critical area. And if you talk about cost containment and talk about this alongside of administrative efficiency, you'll get more movement. Because part of what happens in these programs is hiring patterns are difficult to shift. Particularly if you have tenured faculty. And so this is a part of a little bit more complicated issue. Once you've tenured faculty in a certain area, a program persists simply because you have individuals in those program domains that are hard to move even if they're unproductive. But if it's a part of a bigger equation around overall cost in education, you might be able to get more movement. So looking at it in isolated fashion, I think is a part of the problem. I don't think we should look at it as just one variable. I think it's one of 3 or 4 or 5 major variables that drive cost in higher education that we ought to think strategically about.
Commissioner Roach.
Would it be appropriate to suggest that THEC staff get with key staff from the institutions and work out a proposal to bring back to here for our approval at a later date for how to proceed with situations like this, instead of just creating an artificial metric today that forces a decision?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I would also add to what Dr. Rudd was saying as well, his list of those things that typically were around cost effectiveness of the program, the quality of instruction of the program. Because initially when these programs were approved, they were approved based on a set number of students which an institution felt in their planning that was going to be able to provide a quality level of instruction and a quality educational experience and preparation for these students. So I think this also has to be a question answered, because when you drop below that number, the ability to really provide that level of intensity to instruction and what is available for those students is a very important consideration.
Other comments and questions? We're on the topic, and so we've actually had some good ideas that have been raised here by fellow commissioners, and I'm happy to entertain a motion by any of you to address this in whatever way you think would be best to go forward. I don't know, Commissioner Coben, you had a good point. I don't know if you want to make your suggestion in the form of a motion, and
I know there are better minds that could prevail at this, but because I picked the number out of the blue. But first, I would love to say this, and I used to be a faculty member, so I know what it's like to walk in those shoes. Our institutions of higher education should not be about the business of prevailing for our own sake. And that's a hard pill for a faculty member to swallow. We should be about the business of educating and providing a service for the people of the state of Tennessee. And if that faculty member's area of specialty can only draw a 12% performance level, then I think maybe you need to think about that faculty going to one of our community colleges and retraining themselves or something. I don't think we can bow to keeping on. That's not why we're here. I understand what you're talking about, Dr. Rudd, insofar as the quality of the overall program. And if those faculty members are important to the institution in the areas and in other areas they're teaching, that's so important. But evidently, some of these programs are not very important. And I think that's hard for faculty to accept, but that's where I'm coming from. Okay. My motion,
Now, let me hear your motion. And maybe our director and I discussed this, and I think I'm the longest serving one. I was here when we did not have any kind of review. And it was not a pretty picture because the termination process ended up in the political arena. Wilson can tell you that. You could go to one of these universities and come up and have a big show out up here about this program, hasn't produced anybody, and other folks end up doing our job. It is needed critically, it meaning at least some policy. I agree with Dr. Rudd. I don't think in terms of we're going to deal with this, the cost attendant to this, adding programs. It may be a real rainmaker PhD that you're trying to get to come to your campus, and he or she says, I will come if I can. What I would hope we would do, our staff is fully aware of what we need to do. I hope we could charge our staff with the responsibility of getting with the LGIs, with UT, gathering all of the facts that ought to be considered before we began down this road, see what other states are doing. If anything, I think there's a need for much more information before we set out on a particular course year. And my suggestion would be a directive to our staff to come back to us with, here's the universe on this. Here's what you need to know. Here's what these states are doing. Here's the history on it. I know, we all know that we have a situation that we need to deal with, but I don't think we have the full parameters. I don't think we know how big it is. So that's what I'm asking for, more information. Our staff has heard from us, and if it could come back to us with the next meeting, and then we'll be prepared to have motions as to precisely which course we ought to follow.
Mr. Chairman, and as part of that process, Commissioner Wharton, one of the things I've heard from the board today that would aid us in that, though, is gathering more information on these programs. Because, for instance, the explanation given to those two programs, I believe there's some explanation around the Associate of Fine Arts. I also think there are programs for which there is no explanation likely. Gathering which and sorting the stratification of where programs stand, if it would please the commission, I would like that to be part of the process, because I think it will help us triage which ones have true program design flaws and which are part of a master's in passing or something of that nature.
I suggest we make that a part of it also.
And additionally, I would like to memorialize again Secretary Hargett's request, which is, I think, a very proper and necessary request. And even as you have talked, Lou Hanneman, our government relations representative, will meet with both chairmen to brief them on this report and then to brief them on the ongoing request that's been made by the commission for us to, as you, I think, map the universe a little bit in terms of academic program health.
That's fine.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Harpool, we'll turn it back over to you, I guess.
Excuse me, were
Yes,
you
sir,
going to
Mr.
entertain a
Watson.
motion to
Well,
that effect?
yeah,
I don't think I ever made it. And actually, I think Commissioner Wharton's comments would preclude a motion.
Did-
It's just
if I understand what's being said is that we want to instruct the staff to develop a methodology, including the development of appropriate metrics to evaluate academic programs and to recommend the modification, continuation, or termination of those programs. Is that fair? What we're saying? Is that
That's fair. The only question is whether we need a motion.
Well, I think that's up to, I mean, any member of this commission's free to make a motion.
I simply don't want to get in the.
Maybe we get some guidance from our general counsel here.
Have a motion to have our own staff do something.
Yeah, I don't think we.
I'm free, the key thing is we can't leave here today without saying to the world, hey, we got this. It's only a matter of time when
Some newspaper or whatever picks up a non-performing course and looks at the dollars spent on it. We simply want to say, hey, we've got this. That's the point that we want to send today. Now, how we got it, we don't know, because we don't know all the information we need. But we know that it's there. We know that some action is required. But I think it would be quite problematical to try to map out anything in particular here today. Even, Commissioner Watson, insofar as saying, here's what we want staff to do, they might find 4 or 5 other things that they need to do. So that's my concern. I have no objection to a motion on it, but I think staff has heard us loudly and clearly.
We've, Mayor Wharton and the rest of the commission, we've gotten some guidance from our general counsel here with respect to this issue, and I think it would be appropriate to entertain a motion that pursuant to 49-7-202 of the Tennessee Code, subsection P, that says, as necessary, the commission may convene the membership, leaders, and personnel of each public institution, governing board, or system to ensure a cohesive and coordinated system of higher education and public policy. The commission may also conduct orientation and informal policy seminars for the governing board. So under the auspices of that authority, Commissioner Watson, I think the language you used is appropriate. If you want to make that in the form of a motion, I'll see if we have a second.
I'll second it.
So moved.
I have a motion, Commissioner Watson, second, Mayor Wharton. We've had lots of discussion, but we can have more discussion. Any more discussion? We have a motion and a second. All right, hearing none. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right, Ms. Harpool, was there anything else on that item? Okay. Was that more than what you anticipated happening that year? All right. Next, on item number 6, we're going to review revised budgets, for fiscal year 2017-18. Crystal Collins.
Good afternoon. Chairman Cope, Director Kraus, members of the commission. I am going to discuss the revised October 31, 17-18 operating budgets today. And as many of you will recall, if you remember this slide from back in July, we present operating budgets to you as a commission twice a year. Once in July, and those are the proposed budgets, and then once in January, and these are the revised budgets that were reported in October. And what is interesting about the revised budgets is this is the last time we're going to see the budgets in front of the commission, and so this is the end of the arrow, right? So the arrow began for the budgets that you're about to see today in November of 2016. When we made our recommendation to the governor for the 17-18 budget cycle. It then went to the governor, the governor made his budget recommendation, it then went to the legislature made their budget recommendations, and then in June, institutions provided that information to us for the July 1 budget hearings. Those were the proposed budgets, and then revised budgets here in October for today. So, looking specifically at these operating budgets, the revised operating budgets don't look too terribly different from the proposed budgets that you saw back in July. So when we talk about proportions of revenues related to tuition and fees or state appropriations or other categories, those proportions are very similar, but the size of the pie is bigger, right? So what they told us in the proposed budgets were all recurring funds. Now that they've closed their books on the previous year and they know that there's more money out there, that they have money in their reserves and residual funding, the pie has gotten bigger for the reserved amount. So magnitude larger, but proportionality about the same. So for revised university revenue budgets, back in the proposed budget, we were looking at a total for universities of about $2.26 billion. The revised is about $2.29 billion. So just a little bit more. The pie has grown a little bit. The tuition and fees, the proportion that's related to tuition and fees is about 61.3%. This is pretty much in line with the last 5 to 8 years that we've seen. And then appropriations just under that 31% level, so 30.9%. Of particular interest here, if we were to go back 10 years, and look at what these budgets look like in 2007 rather than 2017, what we would have seen is a proportion of tuition and fees in university revenue of about 47.8%. And then state appropriations of about 43.6%. So a more even-handed partnership back about 10 years ago. With that in mind, if those institutions had had the same proportionality that we're seeing now, they would have garnered about $215 million additional dollars in tuition and fees, but have gotten about $200 million less in state appropriations. So that's what that mixture has become. So this idea of moving away from reliance on state appropriations and towards tuition and fees for revenues at our institutions. It's about the magnitude over the last 10 years for our universities. Looking at expenditures for universities, the total expenditures for the revised budget for universities is about $1.44 billion. Of particular interest here, universities continue to direct the majority of their expenditures to the core academic function of the institution. This includes instruction, research, public service, and academic support. You'll notice here that instruction was about 43.5% of all expenditures across all universities. And if you were to add all of those together, instruction, public service, research, and academic support, it's 60.2% of all expenditures related to the core academic function at our universities. When we talked about this back in July, the proposed budgets, it was about 59.9%. So what we see over the last 10 to 15 years related to expenditures, even though the revenue mix has changed, right? So there's a greater reliance on dollars coming in from tuition and fees as opposed to state appropriations or other fees. What institutions are spending that money on, expenditures, is on the core academic function. It's been around 60% for the last 15 years. And so that's even though how they're getting their money is changing, how they're spending their money is staying relatively the same. So looking specifically at changes in university revenue and expenditures, we're going to look at the cumulative change in state appropriations and cumulative change in tuition and fees, and then compare that to expenditures on the academic function. So those last three things that we talked about. And again, this is at the universities. And so what this line graph is showing you is that that blue line at the bottom, that's the state appropriation line. And so you can see the magnitude of the divestment over the last 10 years from state appropriations. That red line at the top is tuition and fees. And so it's a partnered growth. So it's a similar growth in tuition and fees related to the decline in state appropriations. And then that green line is the academic expenditures. So again, that core academic function. And so what we find here is while the state was divesting, mostly because of economic troubles that everyone faced, while the state was divesting, institutions were backfilling with tuition and fees. But what they were doing with those tuition and fees was directing them to the academic function. And so we find that these two lines, the red and the green lines, are very closely related and they track very closely. And so about 90% of the new funds generated by tuition and fees have been directed to the academic function. So they're using it in order to grow instruction and academic support and student services. So it's not going to things that aren't important for the academic function of the institution.
Yes, Mayor Wharton.
When you look at the red line, do we know how much of the increase was offset by increases in student assistance? In other words, it may be a bit deceptive if we look at the blue line and say, oh boy, the state is divesting.
Yeah, Mayor Warren, I understand your question. You're asking how much of the red line is made up of, say, financial aid, right? So this idea
That's
of
correct.
promise, the lottery scholarship, things like where the state is maybe investing in other ways.
That's correct.
I don't know the answer to that question. I understand the question. I don't know the answer to it. But my however, I can find. We can do some analysis in our office to try and figure that out. So what we can look at is the growth in the investment in financial aid over the lifetime of this, and see how much of that is offsetting the tuition and fee revenue.
The other point I would commend, Crystal, let's do that, please. And then also, I think it's always important to remember in this conversation when the higher education sector tends to talk about the great divestment from the state, but remember that the state has built every building other than those that are non-academic in purpose. So when we talk about, well, the state divested appropriations, that definitely happened, but in the meantime, the state has continued to build every instructional facility. So I think including that as part of the formula is important as well.
Sure. I think at least as far as the operating budgets go, when we talk about state appropriations, we're talking about direct appropriations to institutions that allow them their unrestricted revenue. So it allows them to do things. Capital is very important, but it is restricted to the capital investment. Financial aid is very important, but it is restricted to financial aid and those activities. So yes, point taken, and I made a note, and Mayor Wharton, I will be in touch.
Well, one additional question that we always used to do is, how does our 52 to 39% compare with our peer states? I mean, in this world, competition is everything. We may be at the top. We may be at, where are we compared to comparable?
As far as with revenue?
That is correct.
Okay.
Divestment is a strong, I don't like that word. That's too strong for me. Are other states following, if you were to look at Georgia, Alabama, Florida, would you see the same divergence?
So this is a great question, Mayor Wharton. In fact, SHIO recently released the state higher education fiscal report, the CHEF survey, and that was just preliminarily released. I don't think we have a final version yet. But to answer your question, we're doing much better than most other states as far as state investment in higher education. And I would point out that this graph is showing the blue line is coming back up, and so the last 5 to 7 years have been increased direct investment by the state, and we're always very aware of making sure that the legislature understands we appreciate that. But we can provide that information to you.
There's good news here. We want to be honest and transparent, but having lost out on a number of site selections as a county mayor and city mayor, our competitors use this against us. Because it questions our state's commitment to higher education. So I'm a little leery. I'm always concerned about the state, one agent of the state, putting out something like this without it being a complete picture of, you see, this doesn't tell us anything about the drive to 55. See, we've had a great report there. But if I were representing the state of Kentucky, and I'm competing against Tennessee or Indiana, I'd kill you with that. So all I'm saying is just make sure that when we start putting out these reports that we give an accurate picture of the whole enterprise. Because this can be used against us. It really looks good in isolation, but it's just a tiny portion of what our state is doing and how well we're doing.
You'll move to destroy the slide?
Yeah.
I second that. So let's move on.
That was a draft slide.
That's right. It's
That's great.
Looking now at community college revenue. So this is in relation to that first pie chart that we saw for universities. This is how the revenue streams look at community colleges. And one of the first things you'll notice here is that we're closer to a one-to-one partnership here between state appropriations and tuition and fee revenue. And that's something that I believe Tennessee has been very specific and diligent with to make sure that our community colleges remain affordable to our students. And so by continuing to invest in those units at the appropriation, again, direct unrestricted E&G appropriation level. So tuition and fees of 52.6% of your revenue and appropriations at 43.5%. Again, if we were to go back and look at 10 years ago, what that mix looked like, it was basically the mirror image. So you would have about 53% in state appropriations and about 45% in tuition and fees. If those institutions in 2007 had this mix that the 2017 institutions do, they would have generated about $42 million more in tuition and fees, but received about $40 million less in state appropriations. So again, not the same magnitude as our universities, but still a reliance, at least a majority reliance on tuition and fees for the revenue picture. So this is showing the community college revenue comparison over the last 10 years. And of particular interest here is when the flip happened. So when did we move away from the majority of revenues at community colleges coming from state appropriations, and that moved to tuition and fees? And that happened in 2009. That should not be a surprise to anyone. That was pretty much the height of the Great Recession, and the state just didn't have enough money. No states had enough money to invest in their institutions at the rate that they had been. So the good news with this slide here, and what is important, and I know it may be hard to see, but we're getting close to being partners again. So we are closing the gap, and that is something that's been happening over the last 5 years at our community colleges, closing the gap and moving back towards where it would be a 50-50, 50% state appropriations, 50% tuition and fee revenue. Looking at community college expenditures, specifically, they look very similar to the universities. The only thing of note here is the fact that there are only 3 categories in the academic core, because community colleges, at least at this point, are not doing research just yet, not in the way that universities are. And so the academic core at our community colleges is made up of the instruction category, public service, and academic support. If you were to add all of these up, it's right at about 60%, just like it is with the universities, so they're directing their money towards the core academic function. Over the last 15 years, instruction has been at least 50%, if not more, of all expenditures at community colleges. So they are investing their expenditures directly into their students and their classrooms and their faculty. One last thing, I know in July there was a conversation about this idea of the sustainability of the model of expenditures at our institutions, at higher education. So this idea of how long can we sustain relying on state appropriations and tuition and fees in order to balance our budgets. And there was a discussion about the majority of most expenditures at institutions are fixed. So this idea that 80% of expenditures are related to personnel. So this goes directly to the conversation that President Rudd was having in the last presentation, this idea that if you're going to have a conversation about program inventory and things like that, you need to have a conversation also about your staff and tenured faculty and things like that, and the costs associated with that. So if 80% of your expenditures are related to your personnel, what does that say about your overall health as an institution? And so what we're looking at here specifically is we are looking at, if you were to look at instruction across all of higher education, so that's what the blue bar is. So instruction is the closest metric that we have within the operating budgets for personnel, because the majority of funding on personnel for instruction is going towards personnel. So it's our proxy measure for the purposes of operating budgets. If you were to look at personnel expenditures, so instruction expenditures, control for inflation, so back out this idea of a cost of living that happens every year, back that out. Are your instruction expenditures driving increases in overall E&G expenditures. And what we found over the last 5 years is, on the average, no. What is driving those overall expenditures, and that's the black bar at the end of each year here, so we're looking at 5 years of data. What is driving those increases are investments in academic support and student services. So these secondary academic functions that an institution provides. So while E&G expenditures are increasing, the majority of that is being driven by investments in other things. So they're maintaining their investments in personnel through instruction, but increasing their investments in academic support and student services. We find this to be it's very preliminary research that we're doing in our division, but it's interesting, and we're hoping to look further back and then do some additional queries about trying to determine what is driving the expenditures at institutions and growth in expenditures, and are institutions being efficient. And it sounds like that's going to be a partnership conversation with academic affairs, which we look forward to. So that's all I have today about the revised operating budgets for 17-18. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or suggestions for additional work for me to do.
All right. Mr. Johnson, do you have the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that the commission approve the FY 2017-18 October 31st revised operating budgets and authorize the executive director to make appropriate technical adjustments if necessary and transmit the operating budgets with the commission's actions and comments to the Department of Finance Administration for the review and approval.
There's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Dr. Dishner. Further discussion on this topic? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Mr. Shelby is abstaining.
Yes, sir. Comptroller Wilson abstains. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Crystal. All right, item number 7 is master plan update. Ms. Miller, we're going to call on you again, please. This master plan, I think, is going to be, Austin P.
Good afternoon. On January 7th of this year, January 9th, pardon me, we had the pleasure of visiting the Austin P campus to hear about the master plan update and tour the campus. THEC staff and Director Krause went on the trip along with commission members Pam Coben and Jimmy Johnston, and also the state architect joined us, Ann McGarren. We had a great trip. It was a great opportunity not only to hear about the plan but to tour the campus, which you can really walk around and see what's going on and not only look at all the great facilities but look at the challenges, look at the strategic direction of the campus. This is, as I mentioned before, a great example of a master plan update with the basis of the plan being intact and also the update being completed by the original master planner. And so this is this kind of trip and visit and review is an effort that THEC wants to continue with future master plans. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Alyssa White.
Chairman Cope and Commissioners, Director Krause, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about our updated master plan and appreciated the efforts on behalf of the THEC staff and state architect to really visit our campus. It was a delight to show our commissioners what I think is one of the most gorgeous private feel campuses in the Southeast, and so I'm very proud of it. This master plan is based on a comprehensive plan that was done in 2013 by Dober, Litsky, Matthey, and Art Litsky led us through the update as well. The reason we needed this new plan is because we finished our strategic plan in 2015, and it goes from 2015 to 2025. We also purchased nearly 11 acres of property contiguous to and across the street our university, so we really needed to plan what we could do with that new property. And so I'll show you first a rendering of our strategic plan. In the outer ring are the key principles of the plan, and the inner ring are the 5 goals. This particular master plan addresses specifically 3 of our goals pertaining to enrollment growth, student success, completion, and workforce preparedness and sustainability. Enrollment growth is not just to grow. We are very deliberate in determining who is missing from our campus. We looked at our opportunities, we looked at our gaps, looking at the proportion of students that we would expect to see at the undergraduate and graduate levels, resident and out-of-state, international and domestic. And so we outlined what the appropriate balance would be in these categories and set enrollment targets based on what we think would be normalizing our population. The student success slide really just focuses on our access mission. We are not a complete open enrollment institution, but we really have a very strong mission to provide access to students who might not have the opportunities to go to some of the institutions across the state because they need to work at home or they came from rural high schools. We've got some high schools where there's not a specialist in chemistry or a specialist in biology or a specialist in physics. They may have one science teacher. They don't have the background in all the sciences that some of the metropolitan schools offer their students. And so we really believe in that access mission. But once we accept them, they're ours. And it's really important to us that we try to get them out, get them prepared. And so this Student Success Initiative really implores us to provide opportunities for collaborative learning, for team-based learning, for problem-based learning. And a lot of our buildings don't allow that. We have small classrooms, we have older classrooms for the most part, and they're not necessarily the right sized or even the right layout. It would be hard to renovate some of those spaces to have high impact practice teaching in some of our older spaces. And so we need adequate spaces. Not only do we need adequate spaces, we need more spaces. We are out of space for some of our top programs. We have a highly recognized nursing program, and I talked to our nursing dean this morning. The GPA, the average GPA this year for the entering nursing student is 3.7. There were many students who had 3.1, 3.2, all the way through, who wanted to get in, and we couldn't accept them. And so that means they had to either change majors, go somewhere else, or frankly, a lot of them went to Western Kentucky. And so we can't add those students unless we have more space. The same is true for our medical laboratory science program. That program and our RadTech program, we know there are jobs, but we don't have room to house more students. The sustainability goal is just providing adequate space for teaching and learning, the right kind of space that I mentioned before, and then also as part of our goal, we want to increase our compensation so that our faculty are retained at higher rates. I hope you can refer to the materials that you may have with you. This is a very tiny chart on this slide. In fact, I'm hoping that I can see the chart myself, but that was a failure to plan on my part. But if you look at the right-hand column of this chart, you see the mean of net assignable square footage for the 6 LGI institutions. The reason those are still the peer group, even though we're under a new governance structure, is that those were the peer groups that are the peers in our group in the original 2013 plan that was conducted when we were under TBR governance. So the assignable square feet, I think that says 116, does it? Yeah, I didn't prepare my glasses either. But if you look at the left slide, the Austin Peay column, you'll see that our net assignable square foot per student, FTE, is 105. So it is considerably lower than the average. And the significance of the tan cells on that left column, that shows that we actually are the lowest square foot per FTE in that category. And so when you look at it, we are the lowest, we have the least space per FTE student in classrooms, research labs, and library space. We are lower than the average also in open labs and office space. So we are at a critical need at Austin Peay for just more space. This is a campus map, and I want to show you, if you haven't been to our campus, I hope you'll come because I'd love to show it off. And we're really proud of Jeremy Chisenhall here, one of our Austin Peay students. I had to do that. But he also knows that this campus is a very walkable campus. You can get just about anywhere on campus in 10 minutes. It is a very dense campus, which is providing us a great opportunity and a great challenge as well. So the plan calls for most of the academic spaces in the center of campus, which is great. And we have planned the new building. I'll show you in a moment. We're going to ask for a new building, and I'll show you that it'll fit within that nice circle. The next bit of space is residential, and that's to the west side of campus. The west side of campus is only about 3 blocks from the Cumberland River, which is a wonderful opportunity for us. It's beautiful. Then we have student space, which includes our Honors Common, the Morgan University Center, and the Foy Recreation Center. Those are kind of nestled in between the academic and the residential space. Athletic space, I nearly killed it, is at the north end of campus. That's our football stadium, and baseball, basketball, everything athletic is at that side. And then this red line indicates College Street. College Street is a state highway. It is a state highway. And that means that we don't have a lot of say over what happens at College Street. So when you read your master plan and you see some of the options in the master plan for traffic calming and getting across College Street, realize that there are many state entities as well as city entities that have a lot to say over what we can do with access to College Street. The reality is students and faculty and staff go across all day long College Street even now. Johnny's Big Burger's right across the street, and it's within walking distance of my house. And so I've made a lot of trips there myself. So people are going to go across. But what we'd like to do is have some mixed-use development across College Street to have more of a town feel around the college. And that means we would have things like, I'd like to have a bubble tea house. What university doesn't have Asian tea somewhere, right? Or a yogurt shop, or some dining opportunities for students. There are some businesses I hope won't go across there, but some others that would really give us a better student life option for students who live on campus. Also for faculty and staff who want to live downtown. Also, the great thing about our university is to the south side of campus, we are only 3 blocks from a very historic, beautiful downtown. And so we really are in a win situation with a great opportunity to develop our campus to take advantage of downtown and the Cumberland River. So what our greatest needs are, this list is a list of potential new construction in this updated master plan, but where we're going to focus our attention is on the health professions building that we requested this year. We didn't make the list this year. We're going to do our due diligence and bring that back to you next year. We really need space for nursing and allied health. That's our medical laboratory science, our RAD-TEC program, our psychological science program, health and human performance. We have 700 majors in health and human performance, and they get jobs, and they go to PT school. We have really good results in that program, but it's really full. Our social work program, we need more collaborative learning spaces and then classrooms. So what we're requesting is that we vacate 35,000 square feet and build a new building of nearly 68,000 square feet, and then renovate the 35 for other academic programs to expand. So what that would look like is, with construction costs and getting everything site ready, the total building cost for Project 1, which would be the new building, would be about $65 million. And then we'd need another $10 million to renovate the other 35,000 square feet. So it would be a total cost, project cost for renovation and new building of about $75 million. So the last slide I want to show you is where these buildings would be. And I don't think you're going to be able to see. I'm going to just give you a little description of what the buildings will look at. If you look at the right little circle to the right side of the map, that's actually the east side of campus on 8th Street. That would be the new health professions building. What's interesting about that is it would be very convenient because it's by the Maynard Science and Math Complex, the technology building, and the Sunquist Science Building. So there would be a science corridor on the east side of campus. Circle B is actually the very center round circle just to the left of that new academic building. And we need a new general academic building to replace a building that is at the end of its life cycle. And I won't talk much about that building, but if you have a cup of coffee with either Commissioner Johnston or our other friend, Commissioner Coben, they can explain why I'm not going to talk about that other building. But I would love for them to tell you.
The tour began and ended at the building, just coincidentally, for what it's worth.
Yes, that is an iconic building.
She made her point, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I think so. And then the lowest circle, it's really, really hard to show you this. I will just tell you that the library is in the middle of campus, and it is too small. It is the smallest space per student among the LGI institutions. It is busy. It is busy all hours of the night. I live next door to that building. I know exactly how busy it is at midnight when it's closing, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes when it's closing. There's so much activity, but there's no place to put the students. And so we need not only typical library space, but we need more active learning space where students can do collaborative work when the classroom buildings are closed. And so if you look then at the back of the map where I told you that the recreation areas are, we've got 2 projects. One is an addition to our Foy Fitness Center. That center is completely maxed out. Students have to wait quite some time to get the machines that they want to work out on. We just have a lot of students on campus, which is a great thing. It was built too small to begin with because they didn't have the money to get what they really needed. And then at the very back of campus is our Dunn Center. And I just have to tell you that last night our men's basketball team won in that center. And right before that, our women's basketball team won in that center. But this is significant. We have the Ohio Valley champions for volleyball. Our volleyball team plays there, practices there. Our men's basketball plays and practices. Women's plays and practice. Our 700 HHP majors, they have their activity classes in that one building. We have one courtyard, one arena, one space. We need a practice facility. And it's really hard to get everything scheduled in the one place. And so I won't go over any more of the circles because if I can't see them, I'm assuming you can't either. But I'll tell you that the general plan also has more ideas for traffic calming, for better egress, and also for better signage, and that's in the full plan. But I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Questions for Dr. White?
Yes, sir.
What's on the car dealership property? Is it vacant now?
We are using it. We turned what was the used car center, we had it renovated, and we put our advancement office there. Our advancement office there before was in the Browning building, which has no elevators, and it was on the 2nd floor. I want it to be very easy for our donors to come and meet with us, and the Jenkins building is doing that. The building next to that, which was a large, their main office actually is going to be renovated into a Barnes & Noble bookstore. And so right now the bookstore is on the center of campus. The architect was selected this week, and then that's gone through the State Building Commission, and that will start pretty soon, and then it'll be really easy to buy your books, park, load your things into your car. We'll also have the print shop there as well. The building next to that is where we would really like that mixed-use site. And so it could be student housing at the back or maybe student housing above with some of those restaurant-type things that I mentioned before. The building to the left of that is the Lincoln Building, and I have an idea for that, but has not. I'm trying to raise some money before I spring that idea, but I am pitching it hard. So I think we'll have something exciting to request for that building. And these all have to be renovated as their new uses are handled. The Honda building, we renovated the back of that building for an executive classroom. And when I say executive classroom, it's the type of classroom where you have programs where students come in maybe for a week out of the semester. They take 2 classes. They're there in those chairs like you have here all day long. And then the rest of their work is online. So you run these classes a week or 2 at a time every semester, and these executives take their vacations and come to town. And I've worked on those kinds before. So that particular space has been renovated, but the front has not yet. But that's kind of what's there right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Coben, did you have any comment? Commissioner Johnston?
Oh, I just wanted to say, and I imagine that you would say the same thing, Commissioner Johnston, to the rest of the commission, when the opportunity comes to attend one of these campus master plan visits, I would surely encourage you to do so. It is so much more helpful to have been there, to have walked the campus, to have seen the students, visited with members of the staff, in making your decisions and studying the plans that we see here at our meeting.
I fully concur, and I'll just add that Dr. White had one staff person there with her. It was very much but although she's an incredible tour guide and a driver of the van. I mean, she did everything. So I appreciate all your time that morning. But just to add, and you just covered everything, but we weren't just talking about the square footage of a new building, but how that impacts all the other buildings and teaching and education. And then, as you mentioned, in traffic flows, and specifically how your campus lays out inside that community, inside that city, and how that becomes an access to that too. So that whole master plan idea is very much larger than just the square footage of 68,000 new square feet.
Absolutely.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Stafford.
Dr. White, thank you for the presentation. Just one quick question. You mentioned the building of a Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I'm just curious, in your analysis, what was the thinking about the practicality of a bookstore going forward, given the technology advancements that are being made, recognizing it is a college, university, but I just wonder, is there flexibility built into that in terms of how we might use that in the future?
The building or access to books?
Well, just I guess the thinking behind printed books and what the future might hold for that.
So the college bookstore really doesn't have the same kind of focus on books that the bookstore had when I was a student or an undergraduate. The textbooks are actually not the ones where you just browse the shelves. They're in a place where staff bring them out to the students who order them. We also have a lot of online options for students as well. But the bookstore also has, this one will have the print shop as well, where students can have their posters made. They can have materials ready for classes. They buy their calculators. They buy, and you would think that students would plan ahead and say, oh, I'm going to have this graphing calculator, or I need this stethoscope for my nursing class. No, that doesn't happen. They typically are streaking in there panicked over something that they have to get done. We also sell a lot of apparel to alumni and to students who do a lot of advertising for us as they walk around town. And I'll tell you, I've been at commuter schools where everybody in town was wearing the colors of a school that's not your school. And I love it when everybody in Clarksville is wearing Austin Peay. I have to tell my UT friends, I did tell one of my students in the band last night to take his UT hat off at the basketball game. And I have my own UT hat, but it's in my closet right now, so I just say, you can't wear that, here in the basketball stands right here. But so the students actually go in there and they buy swag and apparel and pencils and things. It's a lot more than just going in to get textbooks. And there will also be a coffee bar in there as well. And the last thing is we want that to be a place where people from town can come and interact with us. And there's no place to really buy a pencil downtown Clarksville unless you go about 3 blocks over to the general store, the Dollar General store. And so we really believe we'll have lawyers and office people from downtown visit our campus more often to buy general office supplies and things as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Dr. White, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Really, really appreciate that very much. I hope everyone was pleased with what they saw. I'm happy to entertain a motion at this point.
Move the room.
Yes, sir. We have a motion by Mayor Wharton. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Stafford. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the very last item on our agenda is number 8. It's an informational item. We will hear from Jessica Gibson with respect to Tennessee Reconnect.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cope, Director Krause and members of the commission, I'm fully aware that I am the only thing standing between you and the beginning of your weekend. I will talk as fast as I can and try to take as little time as possible, but we do want to update you on Tennessee Reconnect because the application actually opens next month, mid-February. So I'm going to try to run through, and I'm not going to go through all of this. Just as a reminder, the Tennessee Reconnect grant was signed into law by Governor Haslam on May 24th, 2017. This is a last dollar scholarship for adults to be able to go to community colleges or other eligible institutions tuition free, much like Tennessee Promise. So they'll be able to start using this grant fall 2018, and as I mentioned, the grant application will actually open February 2018 in just a couple of weeks. I'm not going to go over the eligibility requirements right now in the interest of time, but I do want to touch on what THEC and THEC staff have been doing since the signing of the legislation in these areas: operational planning, institution preparation, marketing planning, and Reconnect Success Plan development. Right after the legislation was signed, THEC and THEC staff got together and they talked through rules, they talked through financial aid administration, the College Success Program guidelines, as well as what we need to do around internal communication and communication with stakeholders and partners, and marketing and messaging. Soon after that, we convened a Reconnect Advisory Council represented by members of THEC, TSAC, Tennessee Board of Regents, Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities Association, institutions, and Tennessee Reconnect communities. This group had two main goals, and it was to dig into the TSAC rules, which were passed in September, and to set forth some guiding principles around the College Success Program, which I'll talk about in just a minute. November and December, THEC, TSAC, and TBR staff did 10 statewide roundtables, bringing together Tennessee Reconnect communities and institutions to talk about the marketing initiative, the College Success Program development, financial aid administration, basically trying to keep everyone in the loop and updated on what was going on with Tennessee Reconnect. We also began gathering information from institutions. We gathered enrollment maps from the community colleges, as well as an inventory of adult-friendly policies, practices, processes, so we could get an environmental scan of what was going on in the state. We also proceeded with marketing plan development and the development of the Reconnect application. I do want to spend a minute, though, here talking about what the institutions have been doing over the past 8 months. We requested that every community college designate a Reconnect star to communicate with us, that we could communicate with, and who would then communicate back to the institution. TBR took it a step further and asked that every institution create Reconnect teams. These are 5-person teams that are made up of a star and staff that represent 4 focus areas: academic initiatives, adult student support initiatives, enrollment management, and advising and career. These teams then wrote Reconnect plans, 12-month plans, and outlined what they were going to do in each of these 4 areas. And they've submitted these to TBR, and they did that in October. And since then, they've been working towards enhancing what they offer adult learners in preparation for fall 2018. We gathered in July to set forth a marketing strategy, which then led to the development of an RFP. We released an RFP in August to identify a vendor that would lead the marketing campaign that will actually launch in February. We selected the vendor in October. We selected Design Sensory out of Knoxville, and they have since been working to create television commercials, radio ads, billboards, digital media that will launch February 12th. That will align with the launch of the application. I want to take a little bit of time here on the College Success Program. Part of the eligibility requirements state that any adult that participates in the program must participate in a College Success Program through the Tennessee Reconnect Community Initiative as determined by THEC. So we got to work on developing what that College Success Program was. It is now called the Reconnect Success Plan, so I'll refer to it like that moving forward. But we set forth first a vision, And we wanted this college success program to really provide wraparound support to adult learners to help them persist without placing an undue burden on them. The guiding principles behind this that were really developed with the Reconnect Advisory Council, I won't go through all of them, but the gist is we want a college success program to promote completion and persistence. We don't want it to be a burden. We don't want it to place additional barriers upon somebody. We want the student to have some responsibility in it, and we want to optimize the resources and services that exist and not duplicate. So we gathered another working group representative of institutions and Tennessee Reconnect communities. The decisions, I'll skip the questions that were discussed, but the decisions were to really present a questionnaire to Reconnect applicants. And then to determine potential opportunities to interface with these students based on needs and challenges. We then collected information on specific resources from both the institutions and the Tennessee Reconnect communities. And the idea was then to provide guidance to the students based on a combination of this information. This is Jan. She's in almost all of my presentations. She is applying for the Reconnect grant. She fills out the Reconnect application. On the Reconnect application, she has about 10 additional questions. These questions do not determine her eligibility whatsoever. What they do help is it helps us identify what her potential challenges are going to be. A Reconnect success plan is automatically generated at that point for her. The questions are really focused around things like reliable transportation, access to computers and internet. When can you take classes? Are you working multiple jobs? Do you have dependents you need to take care of? Are you concerned about academic preparation? And what we do is we match her responses to inventories that the institutions and the Tennessee Reconnect communities have sent us so that we connect her to really a map of resources and to human beings at the institution and in the community that can help provide that wraparound support. We will plan to continue to communicate with Jan throughout the process with text messages and emails as well. Does anybody have any questions on the Reconnect Success Plan? I kind of hurried through that, but it's a new piece, so, okay. Yes.
Do individuals know that it's not affecting their aid when they're applying?
Yes, that's a great question. We actually, in very clear, bold print, say the following questions. You must answer them, but they do not determine your eligibility whatsoever.
Do they know it's for their academic success? Because I could still see someone going, well, it's probably not going to affect me.
Yes, so we're trying to get that message out. We're going to have a landing page on the tnreconnect.gov website that has instructions for how to apply. Within those instructions, it talks about the Reconnect Success Plan and that this is going to be generated at the end for them to review and for them to save it. So we want to make sure that we message that it's not having anything to do with eligibility. So we'll probably repeat that message whenever we can.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I want to just finish by talking about how we like to think about the ideal experience for an adult going through Reconnect. Jan. She may have some college experience or none at all. It doesn't matter. We want to reach her. That's what the marketing campaign is for, and that's what the institutions have been doing. Once we reach her, we want her to connect to accurate information so she can make an informed decision based on her current situation, on her goals, and on a best fit institution and plan for her. That's where our Tennessee Reconnect communities come in and the help from the institutions. Jan might have some barriers. She might be in default on a student loan. She might owe money to an institution. She may not have transportation or childcare. She may need to reorganize her work schedule. We need to help her through that so that these barriers don't become reasons to drop out later. Then we want her to enroll. So I just want to make the point here, there's a lot of work on Jan's side before she even enrolls. And the resources from the Tennessee Reconnect communities are aimed to help her do that. Now, once she is enrolled, we want her experience to be different than it might have been 10 years ago, and this is where the work of the institutions is happening and is so important. We want her to see a clear path to a degree. We want her to see how her academic pursuits align to career opportunities near her. We want her to be able to shorten time to degree using credit for prior learning or accelerated courses. We want her to find ways to pay for college. Now, the Reconnect grant is going to cover a lot of fees and tuition, but it's not going to cover all fees. It's not going to cover books and supplies. It's not going to cover living expenses. And Jan may not be eligible. So we need to help connect her to an inventory of resources that will help her understand how to pay. We also want to connect her to groups of other adults on campus so that she can build a social support network, which is incredibly important for persistence and Jan staying in school. And then we want to have support for her, someone to talk to from the moment she thinks about going back to college all the way through until she graduates so that she can graduate. So Tennessee Reconnect is a last dollar scholarship, but it is part of a holistic life cycle that a student is going through. And we have Tennessee Reconnect communities, institutions, THEC, THEC, all along the way, trying to touch her at each point of the life cycle. Okay, and I can answer any questions you might have. Okay.
Commissioner Coben.
Jessica, is there any talk on campuses about, I mean, I hate to even ask this question, but childcare for working adults trying to figure out a way?
So that's a great question. And one of the things that we did when we were trying to collect the information from the institution so that we could guide students in the right direction is we asked that question. We asked, do you offer childcare, or do you offer childcare assistance funds, something that will help? We have some institutions that are offering childcare. We have some that are offering some assistance, childcare assistance funds. But overall, that is not something that is readily available on campus. I think that you will hear people talking about it. You'll hear staff talking about it, but it's not something that is widely available on campuses.
Other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at the end of our agenda. And at this point, I will just open the floor, and if any comments or statements that any member of the commission would like to make at this point, happy to entertain that.
Chairman Cope.
Yes, sir.
There were several presentations that were part of the informational sessions that were not in our package. Would those be available either on the website or sent to us at some subsequent time?
Director Krause.
We will transmit those to the commission today.
All right, finally, Director Krause, do you have anything you want to add at the end? Or?
No, sir. Appreciate the commission's work today leading up to the meeting. Want to always thank our staff that worked on the not insignificant logistics. Carol Ann Orsborn, Corsania Wiley, and Rosie Paget were always very appreciative. And our next meeting is May 17th.
That's right. I want to echo Director Krause's comments. Thank you to the staff for, again, I think it's been an outstanding meeting, and we look forward to seeing you in May. Meeting's adjourned. Yeah.